Hello, good morning, and welcome to Actual Tech Media's Enterprise IT Virtual Summit. Today's topic, Defense in Depth, exploring the elements of a layered security program. And it's really that word there right at the end that's key, layered. So we all know that building an effective security program these days is not a one-stop shop. It's not just a single checkbox on the to-do list. As much as we might wish it, there is no magic bullet, no one-size-fits-all answer to security awareness and protection. So instead, we build layers. We stack strategies that support our systems, tools, and the big one, people. These layers span awareness, detection, response, and recovery. They are inside the castle. They build the castle. They are outside the castle. They are the bonus locks and trapdoors in the castle. Like I said, it is no small thing. So on the summit today, we've gathered together in one place industry leaders and experts who are here to help us explore. The day is going to be filled with exciting trends, innovative tools and solutions, insightful questions, that's where you guys come in, fun dialogue, also where you guys come in, and lots of takeaways that will help you enhance your organization's layered security program. Today you're going to hear from top experts at Rubrik, KnowBe4, Sequence, Tanium, Sneak, and Equinix. As I said, this is going to be an incredible day. I cannot wait to get started. But in order for you to get the most out of your virtual summit experience, I'm going to cover a few housekeeping things with you all. Now, I'm guessing a few of your eyes went right to that little prize icon. I'm going to come back to it. Hang tight. But first, I'd like to draw your attention over to the questions box in your webinar control panel. If you haven't already said hi, and I see a lot of wonderful familiar faces out there. Travis, I'm also excited. I see that. So as we get started today, reach out, give a wave to the other members in the Actual Tech Media community. We love seeing you folks all connect from around the world, share some ideas, and get to know each other. The question section of your audience console is also the best place to let us know if you do have any technical issues that come up today. I'm going to remind you all that a browser refresh is going to fix just about any of the usual issues. But if they are being a little persnickety today, one of my favorite words, love throwing it in there, just toss a comment in that question section and our crew will be there to help you out. Now we also want this to be an informative webinar for you, which means that we want to see those technical questions. So throughout today's summit, we hope you'll get engaged and make sure to ask all the questions you have about all these solutions and strategies that we're exploring together today. Not only will we have team members responding to you during the live webinar, we're also going to have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of each presentation. Now, if we do not get to your question during the live webinar today, do not worry. You folks have been to these events before, many of you, and you know that the time goes by very quickly. So we don't always have time to get to everyone's questions, but we make sure that those questions go to the teams so that they're able to follow up with you. So you will hear back from the awesome humans at Rubrik, KnowBe4, Sequence, Tanium, Sneak, and Equinix. They're going to follow up with you, so make sure those questions get in. And hey, good things should be shared. So today, throughout the summit, when you get that little brain tickly moment, you get all excited and lit up, be sure to share it with your friends. You can use the Twitter button right there in your audience console, and the hashtag for today's summit is going to be automatically added to your post. Now, our final stop on the express tour of our audience console, be sure to check out the handouts tab. You're going to find some fantastic resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. We've got an info pack collection of solution briefs, white papers, data sheets, free trials, ebooks, upcoming webinars, and more. So click around in that handout section, download some of those awesome resources. Now, for any of you out there that I haven't met yet, my name is Jess Steinbach. I'm with Actual Tech Media. I'm very happy to be one of your moderators for this summit today. My wonderful fellow moderators, Scott Becker and David Davis, are going to be here with us in just a moment. Now, I mentioned earlier that I would come back to prizes. Here we are. It is not just awesome content that we're giving away today, and we have a summit-sized list of exciting prizes to give away to you all. So let me walk you through. If you are present here at the summit today, you could win one of 3 AirPod Max headphones, one of 3 DJI Mini 3 Pro drones, one of 3 Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 4 phones. Oh, those of you who were with us before remember that I alternate between Z and Z. Apologies to anyone who has strong feelings on either side. One of 3 Apple Watch Series 8. And folks, you do get to choose the color of that watch, so get excited about that. And that is not even including the $300 Amazon gift cards that we will be giving away every 30 minutes. Yep, I told you today is going to be epic. Now, as a reminder, I said it before, but you do need to be here in attendance during the live webinar to qualify for these prizes, and all winners must meet the actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. If you're not sure what those are, you can find the full T's and C's in the handouts tab. Again, just click into the handout section of your audience console and scroll down to the bottom. You'll find the full things waiting for you there. I'm going to put a few reminders up on the screen here, including the fact that all grand prize winners do need to submit an IRS form W9 to Actual Tech Media. Greg has said, Jess, it's okay to be Canadian. Thank you, Greg. I appreciate it. I appreciate your permission. There will be some Zs in this. And for those of you that are looking for it, you might notice some British spelling on a poll coming up in the next little bit. All right. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we love getting all of your insightful questions during these live webinars. In fact, we love it so much that we have added a special additional prize for all you inquisitive folks out there. So in today's summit, we will be giving away a $50 Amazon gift card to the best question asked in each of our live sessions. Each of our live sessions has a chance to win a $50 Amazon gift card. The teams are reviewing all the questions asked after the webinar wraps, which means even if your question does not get read out during a live session, there is still a chance to win. If you are a lucky winner here on the webinar today, you do always have the option to donate the value of your prize to one of our selected charities. Thanks to generous prize winners on previous Actual Tech Media webinars, thousands of dollars have been donated to these wonderful organizations. So if you are a lucky winner, you want to get involved, please do let us know. We'd love to help make that happen. Now, again, we're pretty happy to have you here live with us at the webinar. We want to keep that good feeling going, so please do make sure to connect with us on social media. Find us on Twitter and on Facebook. Also, be sure to subscribe to the Actual Tech Media channel on YouTube. So many great on-demand webinars waiting for you there. Check us out on LinkedIn. We've got lots of great content. There's a new post that we just put up that actually has the keynote, if you were with us on Tuesday, from Scott and I, exploring some really cool things about working remote and some of the tips and tools that the Actual Tech Media team has learned. So that's one of our more recent posts. Go check that out. Watch Scott and I talk about our team and what we've learned. And speaking of fun new things, if you haven't already checked out the Actual Tech Media Guerrilla Guide Book Club, today is the day. Do it. Head on over there. The Guerrilla Guide Book Club is going to give you access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts, so you get to stay up to date on trending enterprise technologies. Things move fast, so this is a great way to stay up to date and on top of things. These books are going to work on your Kindle, your mobile device, and they are completely free. You can download these awesome resources at guerrilla.guide, and there's a link in the Handouts tab for you as well. Now, if you're a fan of these webinars, and I know that you all are, then why not bring a friend with you next time? Another fun way to win a prize is to refer an industry friend or coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. You're going to find a link to do that right in your Handouts tab, and you will get automatically redirected at the end of the webinar. Now, I've said this before. I'm going to remind you again. We promise, pinky swear, not to spam your friends or coworkers. We're going to send them an invite to a list of upcoming webinars. If they don't respond, that's fine. Then we're going to send them one more little reminder because life gets busy. We're just going to make sure they haven't missed us. And then both you and your coworker could win a $300 Amazon gift card. We hold those drawings every month, so be sure to refer a friend because it could literally be a win-win situation, and who doesn't love that? All right. Well, we have come to the point in our webinar where I get to breathe again. We've covered a lot of good things already, and I think it's time to get these sessions rolling. So to kick us off, we have an exciting guest here to chat with us about some of the biggest trends in 2022 security planning, looking ahead towards 2023. Ooh, that's coming fast. I am so happy to introduce you all to Brian Seeley. He's a renowned ethical hacker, cybersecurity speaker, and advisor at Spire Solutions Dubai. Now, my fellow moderator, David Davis, is ready in the wings to lead us through this exciting discussion. So without any further ado, take it away, David.
I'm excited to be joined now by Mr. Brian Seeley. Brian, it's great to have you on. I really admire, your work, and it's just a real pleasure to have you here. Pleasure to chat with you. So, today we're talking about the defense in depth, exploring the elements of a layered security solution or security program. And, we really are looking forward to your advice on this topic. I mean, what's going on in the world of hacking in 2022 and 2023?
Oh, everything's fine, and no, everyone's safe. Nothing bad's going on at all.
Okay, good. We can just take a break from here then and wrap it up.
Yeah, just don't look at any screen. Turn everything off, and you'll be fine. The idea, I guess, right now is ransomware is really big. The pace we're putting out new products every day that have vulnerabilities. There's a shortage of people. I don't know if you noticed, but there was a pandemic, and that changed the architecture model for a lot of companies. So the fundamentals are the most important right now.
That's great advice. Focus on the fundamentals.
Like,
so what's
dribbling and learning how to shoot. Like, you can't dunk and like play in the NBA unless you've got the fundamentals down. And so you're looking at things like backup solutions properly, like hot, cold sites, immutable backups. You're looking at 15, 20 character passwords, passphrases that are easy to remember, but very hard to break from a cryptologic standpoint. You do not want to have stickies all over the place. And I've seen at least 10 in the last 3 weeks at like a hotel check-in or at a laptop that was being used by a presenter. If it's too hard to remember, it's a bad password. And the computer doesn't care about the symbols and the numbers. It just doesn't. The only reason people add those is it makes dictionaries irrelevant in terms of just like using a keyword like April or password. But use a passphrase like my dog's a terrible driver or my dog does not like the mailman. Something like that.
Absolutely, yeah. You got to protect yourself, and password security and the fundamentals are a great way to do it. What are some other like critical security solutions that companies need to just make sure that they are strengthening?
MFA, if you don't have it, this is mandatory. I can't believe I'm having to say it. I had someone ask me at a conference talking about why they failed an insurance company audit. Like, well, we didn't have MFA on. And be like, how are you still a company? How are you doing that? But if they didn't know, they didn't know. And you don't know what that is. So MFA with no location exceptions. The only MFA form that I know that is currently unbreakable is FIDO token, YubiKey, that kind of thing. Put it on a necklace, put it on your keychain, keep it safe. You can use it with Gmail, Dropbox, that kind of thing. And there are a variety of services that are really good at it, like with the number matching on Microsoft, if you've noticed that trend. When you sign in an MFA, it asks you to pick the number that matches it so that you know that it's the person logging in who has the token, because recently teenagers reminded us why they're the worst people on the planet. A group of teenagers in the Lapsus group, one of their tricks is to wait till 3 a.m, use credentials that they purchased or stolen or harvested, and then just go log in, which generates the prompt on the MFA until it's equivalent of like the Stewie from Family Guy going, Mom, Mommy, Mom. And you eventually just go, and you just approve it. Because you think, well, maybe did I connect to the VPN? Oh, it must be trying to reconnect. Oh, fine. Just make it go away. It's 3 a.m. I want to go back to sleep. And it worked a bunch. So that's how you mitigate that, the number matching thing. That's one of the big trends is teenagers are outsmarting us. And they do say in like parenting books that teenagers will teach you something new every day, or kids will. I didn't think this would be it. But if you ever needed a reminder as why you need to watch your kids a little bit more, this is a good one.
Wow. Scary times. I get the idea that a lot of people think that, once they, for example, put on really long passwords, then they'll be secure. And then they're like, wait, oh, no, I have to do MFA? Okay, well, we did MFA. So are we secure now? Are we all done? They get the idea that they're like somehow they have completed security.
Well, you lock your car on the street and it can still get broken into. Then that's when people had that crowbar thing that you attach to your the steering wheel lock type thing. That might not be enough. So you have LoJack, a GPS. It's multi-layered. There's multiple ways to secure different types of companies, whether you need a bigger fence, more dogs, more guards. Like, how hard is it to break into Fort Knox? It's not impossible. It's just probably financially and human lives costly. Like, you're not just going to break in the front door without losing a few people. So most companies don't have the budget for a really great IT team full time. So like a vCISO is a really good idea. Find a mentor, find an advisor, find a community, especially like on Reddit. One of my favorites, Spiceworks. Find an online community. There are people qualified in so many disciplines willing to help somebody who asks. Like if you find somebody who goes, yeah, I don't know what to do, you think you're going to get rebuked or it's going to be humiliating to ask for help. But in reality, it's absolutely vital in every area of your life.
That's excellent. Very wise advice. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Look for a mentor, and continually layer more and more security solutions, and hopefully smarter solutions. I'm envisioning that might be managed by a team of experts or have expert insight. What's your take on that?
The teams that pen test often, the most often, I would say there's a statistical correlation between companies that get hacked and companies that don't, tied directly to how often and how many cycles of pen testing you're doing and how many exercises, whether it's tabletop exercises. You've got red team versus blue team, purple team working on either a white box pen test, black box. You're always trying to break your security to find out where the flaws are. And if you have different sets of eyeballs, people think of problems in different ways. I'm famous for wiretapping the Secret Service in a very low-tech, simplistic sort of way. It wasn't breaking into a phone system like Mitnick did, which got him to where he is at the top spot in the hacking world. But it still accomplished the job. So it was a different approach, same result. Same thing goes for security.
Wow. And I mean, to those companies out there who aren't pen testing maybe at all, what's your advice to them? Just have a really good backup and cyber insurance?
Well, I'd start with your resume first. And that would probably, that'd be my number one, because you're not going to be a company for long. If you're on the internet, you're a target. Not because people think of it like, well, how can I possibly be valuable? Even if you have no personal information, no financial information, you can be a proxy for attacks or part of a larger botnet. There is value to bad guys in almost everything that you have on the digital front. Almost everything.
That's another gold nugget of advice right there. Just because you're not a Fortune 500 doesn't mean they're not going to hack your network.
Someone comes up to you and offers you, oh, I'm homeless and I need gas money and I've got this gas can. Oh yeah, here's a few bucks. That could be a real guy. It could be a scammer. You have no idea. You have no idea the scope of how good these people are at lying, and they're perfecting it. They're going down the wrong rabbit hole for sure, but they're getting good along the way and they're getting more sophisticated. So find an expert, a mentor, some place to get answers and pay attention, because if you don't, it's like driving with your check engine light on, not changing your oil, living life like you don't go to therapy. Therapy is red teaming and blue teaming, finding your own personal stuff. It's the same concept.
Well, this has just been a whole treasure chest of security advice here. I'm afraid we're running out of time. But before we wrap up, I mean, I hope to hear from you later here in the summit still as well. But before we wrap up, what should folks do if they want to learn more about Brian Seeley and what you're up to these days?
LinkedIn, Twitter, Brian the Maps Guy, Bryan the Maps Guy, because that's the whole Google Maps thing. And if you look up Brian Seeley on Google, most of the results that are all ridiculous, those are me.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thanks, Brian.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Well, that was awesome. I'm so glad we got to sit in on that conversation with David and Brian, and just tons of good, interesting information. I was watching the chat, and clearly you guys are all really resonating with some of the things we just talked about and ready to rock today. Everyone had their coffee. Everyone's up and at 'em. I think, as we were just talking about, maybe the teenagers don't have all the energy. Well, I want to ask you all a question before we get started here. Do you have full confidence in your company's security defenses to prevent a malicious attack and or ransomware? 100% yes, all in, totally confident. nope, not confident at all, or yeah, I mean, we've done some things, we prepped some things, but I'm still a little stressed out about it. I'm not sure I'm fully sleeping well at night, and that's okay. That seems to be the vast majority of respondents here. I'm seeing about 66% of you are kind of lingering in that, yeah, okay, we've done it, but I don't know. So, hey, that's great, because that's why we're here today. That's what we're doing here. That's what we're going to talk about. That's what we're hoping to learn from each other and from our incredible presenters today. So, hey, that's exciting. And certainly I hope we can help you all sleep a little better at night by the end of this webinar here. All right, I've got another poll question for you here. We want to know what your time frame is for adding new or updating existing IT solutions at your company. So obviously in this case, we're talking about our layered security plan. So if you're thinking about making some changes, then, you know, how soon? How soon are you looking to make those changes? Are you talking weeks, months, years? Where are you at in that process? So let us know. Edgar is wondering, what's this coffee thing you're talking about, Jess? Yeah, I'm a couple coffees deep, if you couldn't tell by the speed with which I am speaking this morning. All right, it looks like a lot of you are in the not sure phase. Okay, so I'm digging this. So far what we've found out from our polls this morning is that a lot of you have some concerns about your layered security program, and you're not really sure when you're going to be able to fix it. So some uncertainty in the audience today. And I know that can feel really uncomfortable, but the good news to that is that's why we have all the experts here with us, so that we just get to put our hands out, open our brains up, sit back, and let them pour the information in. So with that in mind, let's say we get rolling on this very exciting virtual summit here. We're definitely starting out on a high note, because up first, we've got Robert West here with us, Inside Sales Engineer at Rubrik. Robert, thank you so much for being here to get us started. I know that we are all really ready to get rolling. I can see the questions pouring in already. So the audience is with us and active. And hey, Robert, the platform is all yours.
Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Robert West. I'm a sales engineer here at Rubrik, based out of Austin, Texas. Today, we're going to be discussing Rubrik's offerings for securing your cloud environments. All right, so here are some of the objectives I'm going to talk you through in regards to some of the key challenges you may be facing when it comes to data protection in the cloud. Then we'll talk about how Rubrik can step in and help. At the end of the presentation, I'll walk you through a brief tour of our Polaris platform, where we make all this possible from a single pane of glass. First things first, let's do a brief level set on Rubrik and the core value proposition of our platform, where it really all begins. First, we modernize the way that traditional legacy backup is done through our single scale-out software fabric approach, built on a 2U4 node hyperconverged appliance on-prem, which drastically consolidates and simplifies the way that core backup is done. We support all enterprise apps for this workflow with an API-first platform that is secure and flexible to automate, driven essentially by our SLAs. Out of the box, it's natively immutable through our append-only Atlas file system. So once data is written to Rubrik, it can't be edited, overwritten, encrypted, etc. We also provide a logical air gap by not presenting Rubrik over the network via standard network protocols like NFS or SMB. Instead, every communication is done with secure APIs. Second, what we will mostly be talking about today is that our platform natively extends to the cloud. Our software was designed in the cloud era with cloud in mind, where we can dynamically move data to the cloud, spin things up in the cloud, take a VM and archive it to the cloud, and protect cloud native assets. Last but not least, where we're going and our vision as a company is to deliver additional business value beyond just the core backup layer. We provide additional insights with use cases like cyber resiliency and data governance by making use of the backup metadata that we ingest. So think of monitoring snapshots for any anomalous changes, or finding out exactly where sensitive data like credit cards and social security numbers might be out in the open. And we also provide you with threat hunting capabilities so that our customers can scan existing snapshots for indicators of compromise to help signal when an infection likely started in the first place. And that's the core platform in general. But let's jump back in and why we're here. And that is to talk about the cloud and the challenges to managing and protecting that data. So here's a checklist and what we're trying to solve for here. Three things. The first, quite fitting for today, is figuring out how do I solve for the cloud. We find that enterprises are trying to solve for data management in a hybrid architecture. So that means they're adopting new cloud platforms and even deploying multiple cloud platforms to achieve a lot of different things unique to that specific organization. Secondly, customers we talk to are trying to make it easier to run their digital estate. Automation is a key tenet to our operational efficiencies. So when thinking about your next data management solution, it's something that must be easy to automate and integrate into your existing environment. Last, but certainly not least, is tackling the security risk. Data security and being able to recover from ransomware plus data governance are top of mind for really everyone. A data management solution would be incomplete if it did not provide recovery capabilities for cyber attacks and region failures. Another problem that comes into play and has to do with the shared responsibility model, where one part of the setup is the responsibility of the cloud provider, and another part of it is the responsibility of the customer. But no matter what, when it comes to security, it's always going to fall in the lap of the customer. And because of that, they are seeking out well-architected cloud solutions. And because of this, it can become especially tricky if you're hybrid, multi-cloud, or operating at an enormous scale, whether it's infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service apps. And here's the main challenge for those with existing workloads in the cloud. A typical cloud architecture often involves tens, if not hundreds, of different account subscriptions across many different clouds and regions, which combined with manual job scheduling or painful scripting, it can really drain the productivity from IT teams. In the field, we're hearing from some of our prospects that they're having to set up all these different components around things like retention and frequency, then having to deploy resources within multiple regions for each account, where now you have to manage backup schemes across all these different regions. However, at Rubrik, we can help you solve this and ensure that your data is backed up and protected no matter where it sits in the cloud. Our platform can tie in regardless of where your organization is in its cloud journey, whether you're 90% on-prem and have a deadline to be in the cloud in the next 6 to 12 months, or you're born in the cloud and building all your apps there. So, we can definitely extend security and governance to the cloud for you. Our customers are all on a journey to the cloud, and thus far, this is what we have helped them solve. Rubrik makes it easy to archive backup data to low-cost storage in the cloud. We can also help orchestrate their existing applications into the cloud to accelerate their move away from on-premise infrastructure. And we also help to ensure their new cloud native workloads are protected. First up, archival. Most customers, if they have an on-prem data center and have replaced a legacy solution with Rubrik, will take an archive of their backup data and send it to the public cloud, maybe something like an AWS S3 bucket or Azure Blob. Our technology does incremental forever in the archive piece. So it's efficient with how we're placing the data in the cloud bucket. We can also automate that lifecycle of how the data tiers and when it tiers based on policies and storage class. This is all controlled within our SLA policy domain to dictate when and where you want your data archived. Because again, of all the metadata and how it's indexed, it's searchable. And if you need to pull back data out of the archive with our software, you can retrieve singular files without pulling the whole VM back. So if you had an archive living in an S3 IA infrequent access bucket, but maybe there's a document you've been asked to pull from 3 months ago, which is no longer in production, it's in the backup. Or let's say you want to set up an SLA policy that says you want to take snapshots every 6 hours, keep that data local on the appliance for 30 days, but then you also have a retention requirement of 2 years. You can then set up the SLA policy to reflect this need, so data after it's been retained locally for 30 days can automatically get pushed up to the least expensive tier in the cloud. We also, of course, offer end-to-end encryption, 256-bit at rest and at flight. Next up, cloud instantiation. This is a feature of ours that we call Cloud On, which is only available currently for AWS and Azure. Customers protecting their on-prem workloads using Rubrik usually implement this for things like disaster recovery, app migration, or an accelerated test dev environment from their existing snapshots on the appliance. Technically speaking, what this does is it supports conversion on an on-prem VM to an EC2 instance in AWS or a VM in Azure, irrespective of whether if the snapshot's available locally on the brick or has already been archived to AWS or Azure. It does this by converting the VMDK to an AMI for AWS or VHD for Azure, from which an instance can be launched in the cloud. Rubrik supports two workflows for converting and instantiating an on-premise VM in the cloud. We can do it on demand, providing flexibility of a good RPO, as an end user can go back in time on any snapshot and hit the launch in the cloud button, or you could choose to schedule this conversion. Once that is enabled, the Cloud On job will execute every 2 hours by default and convert the latest snapshot, last point in time snapshot to that particular image format. Last up is Cloud Native Protection. This is delivered as a service based snapshotting tool available through Polaris GPS, which we'll touch on, which I'll show you here in a bit. This software is used to protect workloads that are infrastructure as a service or platform as a service in the cloud. Because some customers, after they've lifted and shifted or they built things cloud native, they want to make sure that they can provide the same level of governance and security. First of all, for this capability, it's software as a service from a configuration standpoint. There's no running resources like compute nodes or anything like that in your cloud account. All we're doing is connecting via API from our console, which is an aggregation of metadata. It's a control plane, if you will. We connect from that control plane via API to your cloud account, and you're off and running. Implementation usually only takes several minutes. So it's very quick to set up and consume. For scalable protection, we offer the ability to create a policy that spans hundreds of thousands of resources in the cloud by simply telling what kind of RPO and RTO you want. For instance, you could say, I want to be able to back up all of my cloud resources, whether it's RDS workloads or EC2 once a day. I want to retain that data for 15 days and then archive it out somewhere else. You could set that policy up and the software handles the entire backup and recovery process. We take a lot of the manual work out of having to go configure all these different components in the cloud. And 90% of the clients we talk to tell us that their cloud teams are launching and building things in the cloud really fast. And most times it's challenging for them to get a baseline backup and be able to prove to both themselves and internal and external stakeholders that the data is protected. And through the SLA domain, it makes it very easy to always ensure that you have a baseline backup. From a recovery standpoint, it's near zero RTO, just several clicks to recover. You can recover things across region and account in the cloud. Everything is searchable, and we present you with that data back very quickly. In terms of security, a logical air gap provides protection from ransomware, keeping your backups data isolated and safe in the case of compromise. And from a usability standpoint, we purposely developed a no-brainer approach. We have a point-and-click multi-cloud dashboard experience that the operator can go into, derive reporting from, have visibility, plain and simple, in a way that some native tooling from cloud provider cannot do. And then from the cloud builders or DevOps folks, we have the ability to deploy this as a code with a dedicated Terraform provider like we talked about earlier. So you can auto provision Rubrik up and down as you're launching cloud templates across different resources in AWS and Azure. It's really flexible in how to manage, and that's our cloud native protection at a high level. Lastly, I do want to show that we cover and protect a broad range of workloads, the most popular being EC2 instances, Azure VMs, VMware Cloud, SQL, and M365, just to name a few. We actually announced back in August of last year that we teamed up with Microsoft to co-engineer some projects with them, which in fact included backing up and protecting M365, which includes, of course, Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams. It's all derived as a service, and the backups are hosted inside our own Azure tenant, providing customers with that logical air gap and the operational freedom that comes with Rubrik managing that setup end to end. I would actually love to show you this real quick when we jump into Polaris. And having said that, I'm going to go ahead and dive into Polaris GPS really quickly. Bear with me for a second, folks. So this is Polaris GPS. This is that SaaS-based platform that I've been talking about. Think of it as the manager of managers as it pertains to Rubrik. It's pulling in all the telemetry data that you're protecting with Rubrik, whether it be on-prem or cloud native for Azure, AWS, GCP, or SaaS-based for M365. So for OneDrive, Exchange, SharePoint, and Teams, to give you a single aggregated view of your entire environment that you're protecting with Rubrik. As it pertains to M365 or cloud native, it's very easy to set up. So we're going to go to our M365 offering here. You would click add subscription, put in your global admin permissions for OneDrive, SharePoint, Exchange, and Teams. At no point would we store those credentials. We use modern authentication, so OAuth 2.0, to create that secure sync with your M365 estate. And at that point, you start creating these SLAs and protecting these particular objects. So I'm going to go ahead and go to assign SLA domain. For the sake of this demo, I'm just going to assign an SLA or show you the process of assigning an SLA just to Exchange. But know that you can assign a single SLA across all the objects in M365. You can also get very granular and assign it at the user level as well. So we're going to click next. Out of the solution, you'll have a gold, a silver, and a bronze SLA, but you can certainly create your own. And I'll walk you through that workflow right now. We can click create. And then on the left, we're going to be looking at RPOs. On the right, we're going to look at retention. So with M365, we can take snapshots every 4 hours. So say we want to hang on to that for 3 days, let's say a daily, hang on to that for 30 days, let's say a monthly for 12 months. Again, this is completely customizable based on your requirements. We're then going to click next, review the SLA. If everything looked good, we click create, and we would start protecting that environment or that Exchange object. From a recovery standpoint, it's super easy. The workflow is the same, whether it's on-prem, M365, or cloud native. You're going to be presented with this this calendar view here in a second when I go to the user that I want to recover. And then we see the SLA that's assigned to this particular user, which again can be at the object level or the user level. So if we go back to, let's say, the 12th and we want to recover, click recover. We can either recover Aaron's entire mailbox to himself or to another user if Aaron has exited the organization, or we can crack open his mailbox and recover specific components. We also have the ability to provide you with a Google-like search functionality to search based on the actual title of the email or attachment to locate that specific email and then provide you with various recovery options as well, the same recovery options. Original user to another user. Later this year, you also have the ability to download locally to your browser. That workflow is very similar across the board, whether it's Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, or Teams. We do have we have that download locally option for OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams. And again, that's on the roadmap for Exchange. As it pertains to cloud native, let's go to all, and we can see all the objects we're currently protecting within this Rubrik demo environment. So I'll just choose Azure specifically for the sake of this demo. Obviously, we protect VMs and applications, SQL databases, as well as managed SQL instances. And with these two offerings here, we provide point-in-time recovery, getting you down to the second granularity when it comes to recover. Again, very easy to set up. You put in your global admin permissions for all of your cloud accounts, and we auto-discover your environment and provide you with a singular view of all your various accounts. Once we do that auto-discovery, you can start with managed protection. So we're going to select these particular VMs. Before we jump into creating that SLA, you click this ellipses here, and it gives you some options for configuring, right? So we can do file level recovery. So it does require some compute to be spun up when we take those, it's exocompute, so it's not always running, but whenever we take that first full backup and then every subsequent incremental backup, we'll spin up small exocompute within your environment to allow that file level recovery, and then we'll spin it right back down. Super cost effective. Also, out of the solution is going to be in a crash consistent state. From our backup perspective, but you can enable app consistency. Does require our agent, but because of this, we'll capture all the data within memory too for that specific VM. So when we click Manage Protection, again, you have that gold, silver, and bronze, and if you hover over them, it'll tell you exactly what the RPO and retention is. But then we can obviously create an SLA from scratch. So I'm going to select the object I want to protect with this particular SLA. On the left, we're looking at our RPOs. On the right, retention again. So say I want to take a snapshot every 1 hour, hang on it for 2 days, a daily for 30 days, and then a monthly for 12 months. We're then going to click Next. We have the ability to enable archiving. So, at a certain point in time, which you dictate, we'll tier that off to, very cheap, deep storage for long-term retention. I do not have a storage account associated with Azure apparently in this particular demo, so I cannot do that at this time, but you do have that option. We now can enable replication. So we select the region we want to replicate to. And then we tell the system how long we want that data to sit at that secondary site before aging out. Click Next. If everything looked good, you click Create. Now this is a demo environment and I have limited access permissions that I'm granted here, so I cannot do it, but it's really that simple. And then lastly, before we conclude this, this demo here, I just want to show you our recovery options. So if I pick on this, I'll just select this VM here at the bottom. Again, you're going to see that same workflow. We have that calendar view. We see the SLA that's assigned to it. And when we go to recovery, let's see, I chose this one because we do have indexing available, so I can search. Based on the file name to locate specific files. And when I go to recover, I can recover specific files, traverse the folder hierarchy. I've provided, Rubric provides that Google-like search functionality. We can restore the existing VM from this snapshot, or we can export to another region or account. It's really that simple. Unfortunately, I'm coming up on time here, but if you'd like to see a deep dive on Rubric and all its capabilities, please reach out to your Rubric sales team or your vendor of choice with how you procure technology, and they'll get that call set up for you. Thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Robert. We all appreciate it too. That was such a great presentation and demo. So much good information in there. And yeah, I can tell from that, I was watching the questions tick in, and I can tell that you guys are all very excited and pumped up and ready for this already, which is just amazing. I have to tell you, it makes a huge difference when we get that engagement from you all. So little extra gold stars to everybody this morning. Now you can see that I have a question for all of you. I've put a poll up on the screen for you here. We want to know what additional information you would like about the Rubric solution. So please do let us know. We were talking at the top here when you guys filled out that poll, and a lot of you said that maybe you have some questions about your security layers, and maybe you're not sure about when you're looking to kind of make some choices here. So I'm going to keep reminding you of that throughout the day today, that this is a way that you can kind of get a little bit of follow-up information, read it on your own time, explore on your own time, and that's a great opportunity. So please do click on the poll, let Rubric know what information you would like. Now, as I said, we have a lot of questions coming in, and I wish we could dig into them a little bit more. We are a little bit behind schedule this morning, so we're going to keep rolling. But I do want to assure you that all of these questions are going to the Rubric team. So Robert and Rubric will have a chance to follow up with you. So you will get answers to every question that you asked. Please, please, please keep those questions coming in. Do not lose your excitement, because you are going to get answers back to them. And some of these are great questions to hold on to and keep asking throughout the day, because there's some great questions that it might be interesting to get some different perspective from some of the different speakers in our lineup today. So it's okay to ask the same question multiple times. That's totally fine. Okay, and I do also want to remind you to head on over to that handouts tab and click on the Rubric link. There's some great resources and information for you there. That's always a really wonderful way to follow up on the conversation. Go click around on the websites of all of the speakers that we've got here and spend some time kind of getting to know the solutions in your own time. All right, well, I'm going to leave that poll up for just a minute longer. And we're going to go ahead and start giving away some prizes, because I know that you are all excited and ready for that. So I'm going to remind you that you do need to be present here at the live webinar in order to win. And we're going to start out with a $300 Amazon gift card. So our first $300 Amazon gift card of the day is going to Anthony Monteleone of Kansas. Anthony Monteleone of Kansas, you have won a $300 Amazon gift card. And now we're going to give away one of our first grand prizes, and that is an Apple Watch Series 8. So we're going to give away 3 Apple Watch Series 8s, and these are going to go to Mark Connachin of Michigan. Mark Connachin or Connachin of Michigan, depending on how you feel, Mark. Philip Bloomfield of Pennsylvania, and Bob Scalise of Illinois, So congratulations to Anthony on your gift card, and congrats to Mark, Philip, and Bob, who have each won an Apple Watch Series 8. As always, we're going to get in touch about claiming your prize after the webinar. Don't forget that there are still lots more chances to win a prize today, plus that best question gift card from each session. And as I mentioned, that is true even if we do not get to a live Q&A at the end of our sessions here. So please do keep those questions coming in, because you are still qualified to win. But for now, we're going to keep zipping along in our presentation, because, I know a few of you are going to be excited when you see that name. I am very excited to introduce you to our next presenter, but let's be honest, this presenter really needs no introduction, because I'm sure that you are all familiar with him already. The one, the only, Roger Grimes, data-driven defense evangelist. Woo, that's a tongue twister. Roger, it is always such a pleasure when we get to hear from you. I know you have an awesome presentation lined up for us today. So the platform is all yours, Roger.
Thanks, everyone, for showing up for my Hacking the Hacker, assessing and addressing your organization's cyber defense weaknesses. And I'm hoping to show you how to do that by showing you a little bit how hackers hack, and then how you can use that knowledge to help defend against them. I'm Roger Grimes. If you haven't met me before, I've been doing computer security for 34 years. I've written 13 books and over 1,200 magazine articles on computer security. There's some of my books. I'll be covering some of the stuff that I wrote in some of those books here today. It's going to be fast-filled paced. I work for KnowBe4. We're the world's largest security awareness training and simulated phishing platform vendor, which means we try to help you and your coworkers not to get phished. And that's very important, because it's the #1 way that hackers and malware hack you. And we'll talk all about that today. We're going to talk about how hackers gather information on you and your organization. And really, again, kind of just show you how hackers hack, the different ways that they hack, and then how you can best defend yourself in your organization. Many times, one of the most frequent questions I get is, well, why did they hack me? And it's usually one of 2 reasons: that either your company was a victim of opportunity, random target. Hackers are sending out tens of millions of emails every day. They're compromising millions of websites. And on this particular day, you or somebody in your company was just unlucky enough to get tricked, social engineered, and clicking on something, or to revealing some information. And that's how they hacked you. That's how most people get hacked. But it also can be because somebody, a human hacker, decided to target you. That does happen, happens more today than it used to happen, but maybe is to the tune of many tens of thousands of years. And victim of opportunity attacks are millions of times a day. far more common. But regardless of how you get hacked, whether it's a victim of opportunity random attack or a human-directed adversary, you defend against both those types of attacks the same way. In general, the hacker methodology, the hacker attack chain, the steps are, if they do all of the steps, is that they will do reconnaissance on you or your organization, trying to learn about it and looking for some type of plan of attack, and eventually decide, hey, I'm going to try to attack this company, this organization this way. They will gain initial access. We'll talk about the different methods they can use for that. And then they'll expand, explore, and exploit further and decide what they want to do next. And eventually they're going to execute their goal, whatever it was, ransomware or stealing money or something like that. And certainly not all hackers do all steps, but if they do all the steps, this is kind of the hacker methodology that they will use. And again, usually it's also one of three ways that it occurs. It can be, a lot of times it's because of automated malware that you got tricked into running a Trojan horse program, or it was a computer worm or a virus or something like that. Again, it can also be because of a human adversary, but these days, more often than not, it was the initial access, the initial compromise happened because of some malware, with an email phishing attack or something. And then that malware, we say, dials home and lets the hacker know that they've compromised this particular environment, and then the hacker comes in and takes over. That's how most hacking happens today. It's kind of a hybrid combination of both. It's very much like what I'm getting ready to show you. The typical attacker workflow is that somebody's connected to the internet. They usually get tricked into executing what we call a stager Trojan horse program that then modifies their device so it can live through a reboot. Typically then it will collect passwords that it can find on that device, and then it will contact its command and control servers over the internet. And those servers, the hackers will monitor those command and control servers and get a list of all the different things, all the different compromised victims, and the hacker can tell the malware program what to do. Typically, the malware will download other malware programs, tell it to spread in different places around the organization, steal passwords, as many passwords as they can get. The malware update itself so it stays ahead of the antivirus program so that they're not, scannable. Eventually, the hacker will log into the command and control servers, and they get a list of all the new compromised victims, usually by network name, IP address, and host name. So usually from those three pieces of information, the hacker can kind of figure out what type of company or organization that they've broken into this time. And then the hacker logs in remotely to the target and starts to, usually they upload scripts and they start doing things like eavesdropping on email, installing other malicious scripts and programs, and kind of deciding what they want to do to that particular company. Many times they're in the company for many weeks to months, called dwell time, all without being detected. The hackers come in, analyze, assess the target, and then steal whatever they want, emails or data or passwords or whatever it is. And then if they're ransomware, maybe they implement some ransomware program. But how I described it today, this typical attacker workflow, again, is probably how 86 to 90% of all attacker malware combinations work today. It's this combination of initial access gained through some type of Trojan horse program, or maybe because the person has unpatched software and has a vulnerability they haven't patched, or it could be because the attacker knows their password. One of those three ways, the most common ways that they get in. Although by far, since the beginning of the computers, the two most likely ways that hackers and malware get in are social engineering and unpatched software. Social engineering is involved in about 70 to 90% of all successful malicious data breaches. Unpatched software is involved in about 20 to 40%. And then there's usually a third thing. Social engineering and unpatched software have been the number one, number two ways that hackers and malware break in for the entirety of computers. The third thing kind of changes. These days it's password attacks, where the attacker either knows your password, has socially engineered your password, or they can guess at your password. Those two or three things altogether account for 90 to 99% of all hacks. Everything else you can think of altogether only account for 1 to 9%, 1 to 10% of attacks in the average organization. It really is. If you want to stop hackers and malware, you better stop social engineering and patch your software and take care of your password issues. And we'll talk more about that at the end. But if you're going to defend yourself against hackers and malware, you need to first think like a hacker. So we're going to kind of cover it both ways and give you a couple of examples of what hackers do. But again, typically if it's going to be this human adversary hacker that's trying to break into you or your organization. They're going to try to gather as much information on the intended target as possible, typically using what's called open source intelligence, or OSINT. They're going to try to find out what information they can find using Google and things like that. They're going to try to enumerate what company assets you have, what networks you're using, what types of devices, what type of operating systems, usernames, email addresses, any trusted third-party relationships, anything they can use to try to break into you, they will. And again, they many times will use what's called open source intelligence. There's hundreds of these open source intelligence tools out there anybody can download. You can even go to a GitHub website called Awesome OSINT and see them all. And I recommend that you download a few, try to see how much, and try to see if you can find out how much information about your company or organization is on the internet. Because let me tell you, there's a ton of stuff you can use, and at least you should understand what's out there on the internet about you and your organization. You shouldn't just let hackers be the only one that's trying to see what's out there. If you're lucky, sometimes you can get some of it erased. But here's an example, another awesome OSINT site called Awesome Hacker Search Engines, and it just has a list of like 100 different search engines, to download exploits, to break into people's companies, or to find people's email addresses. I use a lot of those actually when I want to contact company CEOs. Sometimes I want to write a letter and tell them, a complaint or something, and they never tell you what the CEO's email address is. So I go find it using open source intelligence tools. A really common open source intelligence tool that hackers can use to find information about your company is called ReconNG. It's, again, a free downloadable tool off of GitHub and other places. But essentially, you just literally put in the company's domain name that you want to investigate, like no4.com. And then there's all kinds of, in this case, this picture shows you 81 recon modules, reconnaissance modules. And you can look up things like email addresses, login names, passwords. That's a tool that a lot of hackers use. And again, I think everybody should run in that against their own company's domain to see what you find. Another common OSINT tool that hackers like to do is called the Harvester. And it gathers things like emails, email addresses, device names, operating systems, open ports and banners, anything that will give you a lot of information as a hacker you can use against the company. Really popular tool is Nmap, Network Mapper. It's been around for at least 2 decades. And a hacker or anybody can run this against somebody's domain, and it will tell you all the different, not only open ports that might be accessible from the internet, but more importantly, tell you the operating systems involved or the applications involved and the versions. The version numbers are very important because that will tell you whether or not the person has it patched. And let me say, in my 34 years doing security and looking at millions of devices, I've never found a fully patched anything in my life. Nmap is one of the things that tells me, that I have found unpatched stuff. There's even a lot of special hacking tools, like in this case, I'm showing you Nick2, that literally you fire that off against a website, and it will tell you all the possible exploits and vulnerabilities that are in a website, tell you what type of website it is, what version it is, and tell you exactly what you can exploit. And there's hacker tools for websites and databases and email engines and so on and so on. Cisco routers, you name it, somebody's built a hacking tool that will tell you how to hack it. And here's an example of like Nick2 on the screen here that's finding a vulnerability, a PHP vulnerability in somebody's database. And it's kind of interesting. They're saying that this suggests the host is vulnerable to the XST vulnerability because of some problem that they had with configuring PHP. And again, you don't have to be a hacker genius. They're telling you exactly the problem they found, and then all you have to do is exploit that. You can even look on the internet. If somebody has something that's publicly accessible from the internet, you can rent a service, buy a service, subscribe to a service like Shodan, that literally you put in a vulnerability like, you have this particular vulnerability that you have or know about or can exploit, and Shodan will tell you all the publicly accessible sites in the world that have servers that are vulnerable to, like in this particular example, somebody was searching for a vulnerability for what's called Big IP. Big IP is a type of network equipment, what was called an open redirect on Big IP. And you can see there's some company names right there. There's IP addresses and company names. And if you're an attacker, you can start to take advantage of those vulnerabilities right away. And it used to be a free, Shodan used to be a free service. Now you got to pay a subscription fee, but it really isn't a whole lot. And again, it lets you find vulnerabilities all around. Here's another one where they're finding Another common vulnerability, what's called common vulnerability exposure from 2014. So this is, and that secondary example, it's a vulnerability since 2014, and there's over 100,000 people that are still exploitable using that particular vulnerability, the Heartbleed vulnerability. You would think that Heartbleed would be closed by now since it's been over 6-7 years, but nope, there's plenty of it out there that anybody, good or bad intended, can take advantage of. Hackers will also look for unprotected online portals where they can do password guessing against. A lot of times it's email portals, but it could be VPN portals. But basically, if they're going to try to guess login names and passwords, they need to find one that's unprotected, that's not protected by MFA, that they can guess against. And you can do what's called Google hacking. Like in this example, I wanted to find out if there are any websites locatable on the internet that used Active Directory Federated Services. And that's because Active Directory Federated Services oftentimes is an older product. It's usually not patched, and it's not usually well monitored. And when I did this search, you can look at the bottom of the screen, I found Tesla. So Tesla, if I was a Tesla employee and I went to log on in, Tesla requires multi-factor authentication to log into the Tesla corporate account. But I found an API, an ADFS API that was unprotected on Tesla that, if I was a hacker, I could start to take advantage of. So they call that Google hacking, where you just can go search and try to find things and unpatched software and vulnerabilities just by doing a little bit of Googling. But typically the hacker is going to try to find some exploitable, unpatched thing, like, oh, they're using, Internet Information Server, version 7, it's unpatched. Well, there's literally dozens to hundreds of websites that have exploitation databases like exploit-db. It contains over 44,500 exploits. That you can just say, oh, I need a Microsoft exploit, I need a Windows exploit, I need an Apache exploit, I need an Apple exploit. You can literally just go look in these databases, then download these vulnerabilities. Sometimes you have to compile them, sometimes you run them in a scripting image like Python script that then attacks the thing that you've identified using those other tools I talked about the different vulnerable services. So that is a really, really common way that you can be compromised, which is, again, someone, a hacker looking for identifying some unpatched vulnerability or service, running tools identifying that, downloading the exploit, and then running it against the thing. But probably the most common way is using social engineering. We talked about, remember, social engineering, unpatched software, number one. Number two way to compromise somebody. Even if you're using what's called multi-factor authentication, a lot of people get told, oh, use MFA, it stops 99% of attacks. That is not true, has never been true. But here's a really common multi-factor bypass hack that uses social engineering, and it works against probably 90-95% of all multi-factor authentication out there. But it begins with a hacker sends a phishing email to a potential victim, and that email looks like it's coming from a legitimate service, Microsoft or Google or LinkedIn or something like that. And if the user doesn't realize that the link that it contains is rogue, is bad, and they click on it, what happens is that instead of it connecting them directly to what they thought they were going to, the legitimate website, it connects them to what's called a man-in-the-middle rogue transparent proxy website, which is a hacker website that then connects them to the victim to what they thought they were going to in the first place. But then there's this man-in-the-middle website so that everything that the victim types in, their login name, their password, an MFA code or something like that, can be taken by the hacker and used against the victim, and anything the website sends back to the victim can be captured by the hacker. If you ever successfully log onto a website, you're always going to be sent back what's called an access control token cookie, which is kind of like, hey, you've logged in, here you are, this is your identity, this is your driver's license, you can be on this website. But the hacker can get that and then use it against the person, so they'll actually capture that access control token cookie, disconnect the victim, and then log in as the victim. And I'm going to show you a video that does that right now. I forget whether it's me or Kevin Mitnick's voice in this video, but Kevin's going to show you how to do a man-in-the-middle website that bypasses multi-factor authentication. So stand by for just a second. So here we are on an inbox, a regular looking inbox, and one of those emails has a phishing email. Kevin's going to click on it. It looks like just a normal email from somebody saying, hey, let's connect on LinkedIn. But this is a phishing email, and if the victim was looking at the URL, they'd see that it's LLinkden.com, not LinkedIn. But a lot of people would miss that, think it was from LinkedIn, and then clicked on the button. When they clicked on the button, if they didn't realize it was taking them to the wrong place, if you look up in the top hand side there, it's LL LinkedIn, not LinkedIn. But really what this is a man-in-the-middle website that's capturing when the victim types in their login name and password. And even LinkedIn is going to prompt the victim to input their MFA credentials after they put in their login name and password. But really what the victim is connected to is a man-in-the-middle website that is capturing all that information, the login name, the password, and the multi-factor authentication code that they type on in here. So the person gets sent the code, they type it in, they think they're putting it to the real website, but really it's a fake website that's capturing it. And if you look behind the scenes there, the hacker, using their hacking tool behind the scenes, has captured the login name and password. The victim is actually in on the real website right now. It has passed them through to the real website. But this is what the hacker captures. You can see email address, password, and what's called the access control token cookie. They could have, if they wanted to, captured that 4 or 6-digit code that they typed on in, but they really, in this particular case, don't even need it because they have the website's cookie. Every time someone logs in successfully, whether it includes MFA or not, the website will send back a cookie that basically says, hey, you've been approved, you authenticated. The hacker can capture that and then paste it into their browser. So here is an example. Kevin is going into his browser, going to the LinkedIn real website. He's not even going to try to log in as the user with their login name and password. He's simply going to inject the stolen cookie into his browser session. He's doing it right here. He's going to open up the admin console, the developer console, copy that stolen cookie into his browser, and simply refresh his browser, and he will be logged in as the victim. And there is the attacker on the real website and as the victim. And this sort of attack would work against probably 90-95% of multi-factor authentication today. So pretty wild if you've never seen that before. And what I say in general, the defense is try to avoid any MFA solution that can be easily socially engineered or man-in-the-middle around using a man-in-the-middle website. Unfortunately, probably 90-95% of MFA that people use are susceptible to that man-in-the-middle attack. What I try to tell people is that whatever MFA that you're using, you should educate your users about what the MFA does, how it works, what it can't do, what it can't protect against. And probably the most important part is the common possible attacks for that type of MFA and how to recognize them and avoid them. Like in this particular example in the past, you could just tell the end user, hey, just be aware that it's common for scammers to send you phishing emails that have fake links and you think you're going to the right place, but it isn't. So you have to pay attention and hover over the URL before you click on it and make sure you're going to the right place. That would help prevent those sort of attacks. And you should do that for whatever MFA solution you have, which is educate people, again, about the types of attacks and how to avoid them. So I've talked about how hackers hack you, the social engineering and looking for vulnerabilities that are unpatched and that sort of stuff. So how do you defend yourself? Well, here you go. And if you're falling asleep, pay attention here because this is the best advice you'll ever receive. Number one, do everything you can not to be tricked by social engineering, whatever it takes. Remember, 70 to 90% of all successful attacks involve social engineering, and anything you can do using policies and technical defenses and education to stop people from being fooled by social engineering is the best thing you can do. Also, patch your internet accessible software. 20 to 40% of all attacks involve unpatched software that the hacker then takes advantage of using some of the methods I showed you today. So make sure you patch your software, and especially anything that's on the CISA, the Cyber Security and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA.gov. They keep something called the Known Exploited Vulnerabilities Catalog. Any vulnerability on that catalog is something that real-world attackers are using against real-world companies. Out of, there's a whole bunch of patches every year. Like last year, there's over 20,000 things that had to be patched. CISA has said that less than 4% of all those patches are ever used by any real-world attacker against any real-world target. And CISA has a list. You can subscribe to it, and they'll tell you what is being attacked by real-world hackers. And if you have software or firmware that's on that list, make sure you get it patched. Also think you need to use phishing-resistant multi-factor authentication wherever you can to protect valuable data and systems. And again, if you don't know what I mean by phishable and non-phishable, it was talking about using MFA that is not susceptible to man-in-the-middle attacks. And a lot of people say, well, what isn't? Well, I got a list. If you go to my LinkedIn list here of known good MFA, I will tell you exactly what MFA is phishing resistant. And you should use phishing resistant MFA whenever you can to protect yourselves. You're not going to be able to use MFA everywhere. You're going to have to use passwords. And wherever you use passwords, you should use really good passwords. A really good password is a 12-character fully random password, which is unguessable, uncrackable by any known adversary we know. If you create your own password, unfortunately, you're going to have to create a 20-character or longer passphrase or something like that. I have friends that routinely break 18-character passwords all the time for a living. They're not even, they're not as powerful as the nation state. So I really recommend that you use a password manager, because password managers create really long and random passwords that are different for every website and service. So I think you should use a password manager. But even if you don't, your password should be really difficult to guess at or to crack if they've got the password hash. And 12-character fully random or a 20-character human created one. You should also teach yourself, your coworkers, and your family and friends how to spot rogue URLs. Most social engineering attacks include these rogue URLs. And so you should teach yourself. I got some links there. I got a 1-hour webinar there that you can go watch if you want to see like 55 examples of rogue URLs and how you should have known they were rogue. And also got some article and graphics that you can download to teach yourself and other people about how to recognize rogue URLs. Really, of course, you should do everything you can to prevent phishing. I have a 1-hour webinar. If you want to see me talk about everything in my head, it's got 99 slides that how you can defeat phishing. There you go. This 1-hour webinar. If you don't want to be bored with me for an hour, you can read it. I've created basically the same content, everything I can think of to stop phishing in ebook format. I think it's like 46 pages long or something like that. Choose your poison, but both of these cover every policy, technical defense, and best practice education thing that you should do to try to stop phishing, which is really important because phishing is involved in 70 to 90% of all successful attacks. And KnowBe4, we're very big believers in training and testing people to make them less likely to click on a phish, what we call phish prone. We know for sure that if you train your people, you should give everybody good cybersecurity training when they get hired, and at least once a year thereafter. Everybody should get this longer cybersecurity training, maybe 15, 30, 45 minutes, an hour, at least once a year. And then every month thereafter, they should have shorter training, 1, 2, 3, 5 minutes of training. And you should at least monthly do simulated phishing, where you test how well they understood what you trained them. And if people failed that simulated phishing, they should get more training until they stop failing your simulated phishing test so much. Our customers that do that, the average person that comes to us, the number of employees that will click on a phishing email, any phishing email, is around 1/3. And after you do what we talked about, which is training in simulated phishing at least once a month and this longer thing annually, all of our customers get it down to around 5% within a year. And since that's the number 1 way that you can be hacked, there's nothing you can do better. Thanks for putting up with me for the last 25 minutes. My name's Roger Grimes. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at rogerg@knowbe4.com, and I'll answer any emails you send my way. And you can also follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter. And with that, thanks, and continue to fight the good fight.
Wow. Roger, I think I can speak for the entire audience. No one was putting up with you for the last 25 minutes. I think we were all wishing we could go a little bit longer. Some incredible questions coming in. I love that. And thank you so much for everyone who's making comments and sharing their own experience. I have to say, I just finished my KnowBe4 training this morning on some phishing. So I'm totally up to date on all my training, Roger. And if anyone out there is thinking, oh my goodness, I haven't checked my training, go do it now. This is your warning from the universe. Get up to date on your organization's training, whatever program it is you're using. All right, so let's take a look at our poll here. What follow-up information would you like to get from KnowBe4? Now, obviously, I know KnowBe4 is a little bit different in terms of the feedback that you're getting. So if you don't see something up there that you would like to get, I saw some people asking for maybe some of Roger's resources and links, wanting to follow up on some of the resources that he mentioned. You can also put that in the chat, and we will make sure, again, all these questions are going to Roger and to the KnowBe4 team, so they will see that ask, and they can follow up with you and get you some of the information. Also, Roger mentioned at the end of his presentation there a lot of his contact info. He's great at responding to things, and I can say nice things because now he's jumped off mic, so I'll just flatter him a bit. Roger is great at responding to people. He really does want to have conversations, so if you did have follow-ups that you wanted to reach out to him directly, he means that. Reach out, and he will get back to you. Okay, so I know that we have a lot of questions. I can see them coming in. I can literally see them pouring in, as well as all these wonderful high fives and thank yous to Roger, and I love that. I wish we could stop here a little bit longer, but unfortunately we're going to have to keep rolling with our presentation. Before we move on though, I do want to make sure that you take a look at the handouts tab, click on the Know Before link, and you can start your free phishing security test. So a few of you were chiming in saying you were really interested in learning about a little bit more about phishing. Go click on that handout and you can take this test, find out what percentage of your employees are phish prone. It's a very cool test, cool offer, so go click on that handout link and check that out. While you're filling out the poll, I'm going to give away a few more prizes. So let's start with our wonderful $300 Amazon gift card. Now, before I give any prizes away, I do want to remind you all once again that you do need to be present here live at the summit in order to win any of these wonderful things. So if your friend is not here and you know that they should be here, call them right now, tell them to get on because they may have won a prize. So our next winner of a $300 Amazon gift card today is Yuritsa Garcia of Texas. Yuritsa Garcia of Texas, you have won a $300 Amazon gift card. And now I'm going to give away a DJI Mini 3 Pro drone. I'm actually going to give away 3 of the DJI Mini 3 Pro drones. So one is going to Paul Krunke of California. Paul Krunke of California. Jeffrey Morales, also of California. Ooh, California, lucky state today. Jeffrey Morales of California and Taylor Blevins of Maryland. Taylor Blevins of Maryland. All 3 of you have won shiny new drones. Okay, so congratulations to Yuritsa on your $300 Amazon gift card, to Paul, Jeffrey, and Taylor on your fancy new drones. Hopefully you'll get some cool footage from the winter, or maybe even in time for some fall colors. All right, well, I do want to remind you all that we'll be in touch about claiming prizes after the webinar, and there are lots more chances to win, plus the best question gift card from each session. I can tell you folks, the competition is tight today. Lots of great questions coming in, but keep yours coming in. Make sure that you've got those questions in, both because, hey, you might win a prize, and also just awesome conversation, right? Well, speaking of awesome conversation, we have another incredible speaker lined up and ready. So let's jump in with our next presentation here. Tony Bailey is here with us, Director of Product Marketing at Sequence Security. Tony, thank you so much for being here with us on the summit today. I know you have a lot of great content to dig into, and we're going to get to some Q&A, so the platform is all yours.
Great. Thank you very much. Quick sound check, and can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you, Tony. You're loud and clear.
That's awesome. All right. Thank you very much.
No problem.
All right. Yeah, my name's Tony. Name's Tony Bailey, Director of Product Marketing. And let me just go ahead and advance the slide here. There we go. So I'm going to talk about APIs and API security, API protection today. Give you a quick overview of the solution from Sequence Security around API protection, and our unique end-to-end approach to help you address issues around the API protection lifecycle. Now, just a quick intro. Today, many APIs are used today, from simplistically from things like your mobile app. Let's say you've got a mobile banking app. Whenever you open up that app, log on and access your bank account information, there's an API working behind the scenes there to enable that communication. The problem is a lot of those APIs that are used are kind of hiding in the shadows. They're undiscovered, they're unknown, and even the known ones are often unprotected against risks. So we'll share some information with you today around that. If you kind of think around APIs, they're really a double-edged sword of today's economy. Whereas they're the glue that make your web and mobile applications work, that double-edged sword around APIs has an impact on security. On the one edge, APIs, they become really the currency of business exchange, driving innovation and commerce. In fact, we've seen some research that says that up to 50% of enterprises' revenues are enabled over APIs. And in one of the verticals that we've come across in the telecom industry, over $160 billion in revenue is associated with the use of APIs. On the other edge, APIs are often a wide open doorway for attackers. APIs by their very nature have well-defined public interfaces, enabling many capabilities. However, hackers and attackers can abuse that. And that can be things such as the log-on experience to your bank, or a registration form to access some information with your vendor. When APIs are implemented without even the most basic security practices and standards, such as weak or absent authentication, then sensitive data potentially can get exposed. And we're seeing some research now where in 2022, APIs are the number one attack vector into organizations. So it's pretty serious business. Let's go to the next slide. Now, let's think about today's approaches to security and then to API. So existing approaches, we've seen that they kind of fall short. They are struggling with the ability to have visibility and defense capabilities into APIs and other applications connections. Often there's a strategy deployed, which is, let's put in a WAF, use WAF mitigation or API gateways to a known risk surface. However, the challenge is when it comes to APIs, as I mentioned, oftentimes APIs are unknown to an organization. They're lurking in the shadows. Developers they're using either a hosted API that nobody knows about, or some other factors are coming into play. And so the challenge there is, certainly we've seen, there's more than 100 times more APIs hide undiscovered and unknown. I'll dig into that in a few moments. And even known APIs can be poorly protected. Either they're incorrectly coded or not quite configured in the right way. And so the solutions out there can really sort of, be problematical to address API security. And if you think about it, how many billions of APIs transactions are taking place every single day? People logging onto their bank account, people logging onto their telecom provider through their phone. So not being able to scale effectively is kind of problematical with existing approaches. Not to say these existing approaches don't have their place, but API security and API protection is a unique problem that needs to be addressed. So how do we kind of look at this? So our view is we kind of look at this as a continuous API protection lifecycle. And it can begin, first of all, by having a clear view and knowing all public-facing APIs, whether they're in-house, whether they're hosted. That's sort of job one. Tell me all the APIs I've got and discover those APIs. The next part is having an inventory of all of those APIs. And by doing that, having that inventory, you can then start to look at the compliance of these APIs. Do they meet security best practices? Are they meeting API specs such as Open API? So that's sort of the compliance piece in the life cycle. However, what we're seeing is even the most beautifully coded API, perfect in every single way, attackers, they're relentless. Well, if they're not relentless, they're certainly sophisticated, or the other way around. And so that persistency is they're always trying to change their attack methods. And what's needed there really is a real-time attack detection. And to scale, you need to do that leveraging things like machine learning and artificial intelligence, and having some kind of threat intelligence database from experience that you can leverage to fingerprint and identify attacks. Well beyond lists like you may have come across what's called the OWASP API Top 10. It's a great list. But again, attackers are persistent and they're relentless, and they're trying to evade these known methods. Then the last part is prevention. So providing an inline, stealthy, native mitigation. Why do I say native mitigation? So it's all well and good that you're finding some unusual behavior with again, let's say with your perfectly coded API, there's some unusual activity taking place. For example, we've seen when things like, I'll give you an example. Let's imagine a sneaker goes on sale, and it's something like, the first 1,000 people get the special price. What attackers are doing is they'll create fake accounts, a fake GLM account, thousands and thousands of them, and try and get in to get these sneakers. So that's sort of a thing that we've seen. So being able to block attacks like that really requires a stealthy and native mitigation, behavioral fingerprinting to block threats, and have a really high efficacy. The last thing you want is alarm bells ringing, let's say to an IT security team who are already overloaded with alerts left, right, and center. You really need a really high efficacy to provide that prevention capability. And then really the last part is as new APIs come online, being able to test those APIs to ensure that before they go live, they're meeting these open specs and security requirements and compliance. So segue a little bit. So how does Sequence help you with that API protection lifecycle? So we've got 3 modules that we talk about. The first one is called API Spider. What API Spider does is it looks at your external attack surface as if you were an attacker outside looking in. So it helps you with security testing by ensuring that API development is not resulting in APIs that provide additional attack surface. This tool is kind of interesting. There's no deployment of the tool. In fact, what you do is when you open up the tool, you can type in your company's domain name. So let's say TonyBailey.com. What it will do is it will crawl the environment and it will uncover any APIs associated with that domain. And it's been fascinating with our customers. The number of customers that have said, well, we know all about our APIs, but we'll run API spider crawl anyway, just see what's going on. And the surprise, well, I won't say surprise, sometimes it's shocking where they'll say, wait a minute, we didn't know about that API. What's going on here? So that's the power of API Spider. The second module is called API Sentinel. So it's doing the inventory and the API compliance piece. It's mainly focused on finding shadow APIs, unmanaged APIs, along with your managed APIs. And so it will look for things like hygiene issues, such as weak authentication that are leaking sensitive information. And it'll do this by leveraging machine learning-based runtime discovery and inventory tracking and analysis of your APIs. So that's that second module. And then the third module is really interesting. So what I said earlier around what if all your APIs are perfectly coded in every single way, no misconfigurations? What bot defense does, it primarily looks at detecting threats such as business logic abuse, automated bots, and fraud. And even if you're taking care of API hygiene, as I mentioned, business logic abuse or bot attacks can still take place. And this module helps prevent successful attacks. It'll prevent highly automated exploits that traditional web application firewalls may miss, and also address OWASP top 10 compliance requirements. So that's where that kind of falls into place. So how does this all work? So this slide here, it's a build that I put together to try and explain the pieces. So to get the discovery capabilities that involves API Spider, we use a predictive crawling approach to find external facing APIs, hosted APIs, along with issues like, surprisingly, log4j, or of what we coin the term is long4j. So those are the log4j vulnerabilities that you think you got rid of, but sure enough, they keep reappearing. And then to get the detect capabilities, that involves API Sentinel. So we use a runtime discovery of APIs, creating that inventory of APIs, along with ensuring APIs meet necessary specifications to minimize risk. And then the defend capabilities is bot defense, where it's doing basically a runtime threat protection. So how do we do that? So those are the pieces there that I just described, the predictive crawling, the runtime API discovery, and the active attack detection. You notice the last one there in the middle one, it says native mitigation. I want to call that out again. It's really, really important that to do your mitigation, you don't have to go to yet another third-party tool to do that. It's all built in to these modules from Sequence Security, native mitigation. So what we do is we stream the traffic through what we call CQAI. CQAI, that's our machine learning AI engine. It powers API Spider, API Sentinel, and bot defense all in real time. And what we do is the machine learning element has about 200 different machine learning models that we ship out of the box. But you can customize those models. Just bear in mind, attackers, they're relentless, sophisticated, and they do change their methods. So you need to be able to look for suspicious, risky, or malicious behavior. And those models are also looking for weaknesses in API protocols. For example, if an API is not using strong authentication, that machine model will detect that automatically. And so we're doing a lot of the work for you by bringing this stream of information and doing the analysis. You can set policies around these machine learning models. And the other cool thing as well is for your SIM and SOAR or analytic systems, then we can integrate with those as well. I want to get back to that notion of alert fatigue, having to go to all these third-party areas for tools information. We're very sensitive to this notion of oftentimes organizations want to centralize the capture of information. Let's see here. Let's go on to the next slide. All right. So as I start to summarize here, so where Sequence fits into the security stack. So we've got those three areas that I talked about, the attack surface management with API Spider, API Sentinel for the API security discovery piece, and then the bot management piece for the prevention. You can imagine for some organizations, the notion of bringing in another tool around API security, oftentimes the question is, well, look, we need some help. And so Sequence Security also has another piece, which is our managed services, where we can actually help you with rule customization and then discovery of risk detection. So we provide that as a service. And then the threat monitoring, again, this notion of attackers, they're sophisticated. They're going to try and get into your environment. And we've seen data breaches even recently where APIs vulnerabilities have been taken advantage of. And then the last piece is for these API protection and these managed services is how we complement things like the web application firewall, WAF, API gateways, proxies, the LBs, and content delivery networks, and those kind of things to offer 360-degree visibility. So it really offers additional advantages to complement the WAFs and other things. And then as I'm going to summarize here. So for the business benefits, you can imagine the last thing you want is an API vulnerability or an attack on an API that impacts revenue. So we try and maximize your business value by ensuring your revenue is not affected. And then the middle one here is showing that you get to know the unknown, and you can protect the unprotected, eliminate shadow API risk, and have the best practice compliance in place. And then we would argue, unsurpassed attack detection and defense. We've got so many customers where we've learned from them around attacks that have taken place, and so we have this threat intelligence in place that we can leverage. And then, if you look at some of the numbers here, the numbers are kind of fascinating. It's one of our customers is saving over $1 million from preventing bot attacks, or preventing bot attacks from things like account takeovers and things like that. And so their payback is pretty big in a short period of time because they're saving so much money. Then we've got a vertical here around the media and dating vertical. And so this one's interesting. One customer has about 35 million subscribers on a mobile dating app. Damn, that's a lot of single people. But you imagine being a victim of a scam. Some estimates say it's over $12,000. This is money from the victim as a result of being, involved in a scam. And so saving that amount of money for victims is really, really important. And then the last column here shows a telco company. So they were using us for API identification. They thought they had about 8,000 APIs. So they ran the API spider tool with us. They had over 18,000 APIs. And so that delta, you can imagine, being behind all those other APIs. And we did that in a matter of 20 minutes. We've just ran the API spider crawl and found all these, unknown shadow APIs. And so, definitely some exciting results that we've seen there. And, we've got some pretty significant customers in play, some pretty big brands that are using us. We're processing right now over 6 billion API calls per day across all of our customers. So again, you imagine the wealth of information that we're learning, from all those transactions. It builds out our threat intelligence as part of our solution. It's curated threat intelligence for API security. You can actually get started today, for example, with API Spider. No commitments, no credit card required. Basically, you click on this URL here, Sequence AI/assessment, and what will happen is you'll be asked to fill out a form with your contact information, submit that, and then one of our experts will get back to you to schedule a time to do the assessment. You can imagine, going out and crawling your environment for shadow APIs. It can be sensitive, so we don't, we want to make sure that we're holding your hand there as that gets done. And it's low friction. There's no agents to deploy, and there's no network changes. So very, very low impact. And that is my end of my 10 slides, and we'll be happy to take any questions.
Oh, Tony, that was so awesome. We have just a flood of questions coming in that I do want to get to, and luckily we've got a few minutes here. But before we jump into that, I do want to point out that we've got a poll up on the screen for you here. So what we'd like to know is, what additional information would you like to get about the Sequence security solution? So you heard a lot of great stuff today. I know you're all really excited. Lots of questions coming in about APIs. So if you would like some additional information, this is a great way to let Sequence know what specifically they can hand you, how they can help you kind of follow up on any research or information gathering that you might be in the process of doing, or that you might have now been sparked to do after that amazing presentation from Tony. So please do take a minute now and fill out that poll. Tony, great presentation. Again, lots of high fives from the audience. Also, a fellow Brit out there in the audience wanted you to know that you reminded him of home. So thank you for bringing that. And should we dive into some of these questions here, Tony?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, well, I want to start with this one. Can you tell us a little bit about the overhead that might be required from a team in order to run Sequence?
Yeah, that's a really common question we get, and so there's no agents, there's no JavaScript, there's no SDK required. So what we're doing is just a simple traffic redirect to our SaaS instance, and so that means you can quickly analyze and start protecting APIs just in a matter of minutes, because we're not infringing in your network or agents or anything like that. And with this low impact approach, there's not really much of a security burden on dev teams, because there's we're inline, simple traffic redirect. And the nice thing about that is there's no page load delays or forced mobile user upgrades by taking that approach.
Okay, I love that. I'm just checking here as I read through. We've got a couple of questions about botnets, and kind of wondering if I'm just trying to consolidate a few because we're short on time here. Well, let's see. Christopher's wondering if this is going to work to completely mitigate the amount of bots being used for online releases.
Yeah, so in terms of bot mitigation, yeah, for sure. And so what I mentioned earlier around the amount of threat intelligence we have around different types of bot attacks, those 200 machine learning models that I mentioned, those are based on real things that took place, as well as the ability to customize those. And I think when it comes to development, every API is different. And so you may have to customize some of the machine learning models just a little bit. That's where that managed service may come into play. It may not. So certainly we can accommodate that. And think about some of those big logos I mentioned. Thousands of APIs are being used and being developed every single day. So the answer to that would be a simple yes.
I appreciate that. And that customization was certainly something that came up in the questions as well. So hopefully that answers some for a few of you out there wondering how much they would be able to tailor to their own specific industry, especially not having something flag if it is fine for their industry, or maybe it's not fine for their industry. So that's really important. I really wish we could keep going, Tony. We are out of time. Before we let you go, one thing I do want to say, we did have someone ask for your full name and title. So again, Tony Bailey, Director of Product Marketing at Sequence Security. Tony, if somebody wants to reach out to you, if somebody wants to get started with Sequence and take that first step, what do they do?
Yeah, most definitely. So that slide that I showed that had the /assessment, that would be definitely your first step. It's a really simple step. There you go. Very simple. Click on that link, fill out the form, and one of our experts will get back to you promptly, usually within a business day, and we'll get the ball rolling for you.
Amazing. Tony, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
All right, and again, a reminder, if you haven't already done so, please head on over to that Handouts tab, download the Sequence data sheet. It's Sequence Unified API Protection Solution. Really interesting read, lots of good info. I know a lot of you were kind of wondering a little bit more about APIs, so download that, check that out, and save that for reading after we wrap today. Also, click on the link that you have up on your screen there real quick, okay, because we're going to move it along. All right, so up next, we do have a prize giveaway. We're going to do a $300 Amazon gift card. Quick reminder that you do need to be here present at the webinar in order to win. Our next lucky winner of a $300 Amazon gift card is Mike Weglin of Maryland. Mike Weglin of Maryland. And then we are going to go ahead and jump to our next grand prize giveaway. So this is going to be an Apple Max headphone. So we've got 3 of them. Our 3 winners of Apple Max headphones today are Tiffany Pack of West Virginia, Andre Bagoshakanian. Oh my goodness, I am so sorry. Bagoshakanian. Wow. Yep, that was not close. Andre, we're going to send you a message of California. Jeremy. Oh, come on, guys. McCarran. Oh, Lordy. You are really testing me today. Jeremy Meccaron. Yep, of Texas. Tiffany, Andre, and Jeremy, you guys have won Apple Max headphones. Oh boy. Congratulations to all our lucky winners out there today. We will follow up with you after we wrap. Don't forget there's lots more chances to win, plus that best question card from each session. So keep those questions coming in even if we don't get to you live. Make sure that you are asking questions both because, hey, it's extra awesomeness, and B, because you might be registering to win one of those $50 gift cards. And that's just win-win right there. Well, speaking of extra awesomeness, I think it's time to move it right along in our session here. I am very happy to introduce you to our next incredible expert here on the Virtual Summit. We are going to hear from Jeff Fisher, Senior Director, Integration Strategy at Tanium. Jeff, thank you so much for being here with us today. I can't wait to hear more from you and from Tanium, so I'm going to hand the mic right on over to you.
Thanks much. All right, we'll get started. So what we want to talk about here from Tanium is what we call whack-a-mole, and how multiple sources of, quote, truth make defense in depth impossible. So we're going to get started. Quick agenda, the current challenges, what the power of visibility gives you to do for your defense in depth strategy, and the fundamental questions for your IT ops and InfoSec groups to get there. So what we're really going to discuss is what are all those challenges, why knowing everything makes the biggest difference, and then we'll get some practical questions that you should ask your friends and family and peers. And the spoiler here is that Tanium can answer most or all of these questions for you. And then ultimately why organizations need the Tanium platform and the difference that it makes broadly for an organization. So what are the challenges? It's agent and alert fatigue across the board. There are a number of challenges that really face our IT operations and security management professionals, and they continue to grow exponentially over the past few years. The amount of telemetry and data being produced at scale has stressed our people, our processes, and our legacy capabilities at levels that are much greater than before. The exploding work from home environment means that even more distribution and greater attack surface across the board for every enterprise, large or small. So with this shift, the challenges of protecting our environments continues to grow as we modernize to meet new environmental and regulatory demands. So when we think about that, we have an abundance of data and a lack of visibility. So the amount of data and telemetry, as I said before, being produced is completely unmanageable. With most of your legacy point solutions that are scattered across multiple teams and control planes, data is difficult to view. It's impossible to orchestrate and action broadly, right? That causes an organization to struggle to get to a root cause during an incident, whether that's an IT incident or a security incident. The reality is you can't change, improve, or protect what you can't see, and this is why visibility is the core issue that every operations team contends with, right? No single source of truth, arbitrary boundary based on tool or scope or limitations, numerous agents deployed all over, creating tons of noise and chatter and lack of visibility. We have an environment that grows more and more complex on a daily basis. So our legacy architectures were created basically like feudal kingdoms or airport security, right? Reality is that none of these castles weren't overrun by somebody attacking from the gates at some point in the past, or more importantly in the future. In this model, you are at you have free reign across each one of these tools, but the issue is that in IT or cyber, the truth isn't an average of all of these tools that you're using. Multiple sources of truth is a really terrible strategy for success. Some tools assess your endpoints, right, if they can actually find them. You may have to use a different tool to find the answer, and then even another one to try and fix it. Defense in depth is important as a layered defense approach, as we all know, which wouldn't it be great if all these layers actually talk to each other? Problem is they don't. The fact is the current approach of multiple tools is failing, hence a platform approach. Point solutions just offer gaps for hackers to exploit, and we know this because, guess what? Breaches still happen. So here's the truth about all of our best laid plans as IT operators and security operators. Mike Tyson said it best. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. You're breached and you still have outages. Your outages lead to breaches. Let me give everyone one number that's really important to remember. 11. A breach happens every 11 seconds. What does that mean? Because we are so reactionary. We've made so many processes and split it in this in so many times that we rarely step back to think about our broader question of visibility and our integrated approach to modernization that allows us to understand our underlying data and our visibility issues. So what does that mean? You have multiple orgs and a lot of times reporting into different places with a different version of the truth, right? The bottom line is that the mask that we all present is really different than reality. So what does that look like to an attacker, right? We have different patch levels, different user access. We may have bad configurations, and the threats are real. So we need to know, we need to manage, and we need to secure. You can't secure what you don't manage, and you can't manage what you don't know. The power of any strategy is knowing. We'll get there a little bit later, but visibility is the key, right? Risk is measured, usually assessed in two dimensions, likelihood and severity, and then it's rated, right? But that's all subjective. Both the likelihood and severity is determined on the reliability of your data. So if you have bad data, the worse it will be. In security, the more you know, the more accurate the data, and the better you can defend. And by knowing some things with certainty allows us to actually accept risk for our business. So knowing what you know helps to identify what you don't know, and ultimately gives us a clear focus into what is an extreme risk versus a low risk, right? And then you can drive investment. In other words, knowing something is true removes subjectivity, which is extremely important. So ultimately, what's required? We need to have a plan to operate during a crisis and during an incident. You have to train like you fight and fight like you train, right? Visibility in real-time data is required to scope, to pivot, to hunt, to target, and triage and remediate. Hanium can provide this in multiple situations that include 0 days, vicious behavior, and really force people to not just chase the blinking lights. So what we really need in times of attack or even before an attack is that visibility that we talked about before. But that requires integration, it requires modernization, and a common language across all the domains. All of this is really fundamental to answering that broader question of a defense in depth strategy. The parts of IT and security that may not seem fun or make us seem a little strange are the ones that matter. But let's get into the questions that we want to answer so we can actually get to a better place from a security standpoint. 94%. Here's another number for you guys. In 94% of enterprises, 20% of your endpoints are missing endpoint protection. So we have a really bad problem across the board. When a 0 day is announced, right, whether it's Log4j, Print Nightmare, WannaCry, etc., the question that you're all asking, does it matter to me? And the answer is it depends if you're vulnerable or not. But if you're missing 20%, it's very difficult to understand that question and actually achieve either remediation or prevention across the board. So we have to know first how many assets we have, how many assets are in compliance, and whether they're vulnerable. You can actually mitigate that threat. The question is do you actually know the answer? Let's ask a few more questions that are really key to getting to that broader question, the broader answers that you all want to answer. The one, we want to ask, can you answer in your environment a few different questions? One, how many assets do I have? Right, this is NIST 101. How many devices are on the network? Right, a 0 day is not a 0 day if you don't have, if you know where your assets are and you can manage them. But more importantly, a 0 day is not the time to find out that you have 30,000 more assets than you thought she did. 2, what's running on those devices? Are they vulnerable? Are they patched? The latest exploit is the last time that you want to find out that something in your environment that has a subcomponent or a dependency that isn't patched or isn't managed. Right? What are the applications? What are the libraries? What are the components? Are they vulnerable? Are they patched? Are we paying for software that we're not using? Or vice versa? All questions that drive into that vulnerability management conversation. 3, what's going in and out of our network? Is the perimeter dissolving? Apologies. Your perimeter is ultimately dissolving. There are no more moats. That we don't have that in the way we had anymore because the edge has moved out into the world, right? So if we don't know all of the flows that are going on, what are the devices are connecting to, what peripherals are connected to our devices, and the data they're sharing, we have a problem. 4, what do you look like to a hacker, right? Do you know, do you actually understand what your attack surface looks like, right? Sun Tzu said it best, right? If you know the enemy and you know yourself, you fear not. Ultimately, you have to understand what you look like. You need to flip the attacker's handbook and follow the kill chain. Because if you understand what you look like to an attacker, you can stop it in its tracks. That's the premise and the basics of defense in depth. Pen testing truly isn't enough. You really need to think through having threat assessments across the board, and that is only useful if you understand your assets and you understand your vulnerabilities. 5, are security controls present and effective? Boy, this is the one that always everyone fails with across the board. You know your users are educated and consistently aware of threats, but the question is that all your regulators want to know, are your tools there? Are they operating? Do you know where they are? And if you don't, why aren't they working? Lastly, 6, where's our data stored? The age-old question, do you know if it's hot, if it's warm or it's cold? Do you know the criticality of your assets? Do you know where your crown jewels are? All of those things are key to managing your defense in-depth strategy, but also in your vulnerability management and your patching programs, because you know what order to patch in. And in a crisis circumstance, you have an ability to do the right thing at speed and scale. So ultimately, what does that mean? Truth is required for your defense in-depth strategy across the board. What you really need is real-time visibility, so you can identify your risks to your organization and scan it ad nauseum and at point and understand what the source of truth is. You need to align your teams across the board and have a truly common language across risk, security, and operations with accurate data so everybody can sing from the same hymn. And lastly, you need process automation to do this at scale. So once you have that data, you have to have that truly automated workflow and control planes that go across the board, right? And with Tanium, you have the visibility to know and manage and secure your devices. So I want to thank everybody for taking your time today. Should you be interested, please contact us at our website or via Twitter or via email. Our handout today has what we call our Tanium risk assessment, where we can dimension your entire environment broadly and show you all of the risks that might exist across any of the controls that you believe are actually activated in your environment, and find devices that you never thought you'd find before. But again, we'll take it back to Q&A, and thank you much.
Oh, you beat me to it. Way to go, Jeff. You're on it. Thank you so much. What a great presentation. And Jeff has already put up the poll for us, so he's already done my job. And thank you for doing so. I do want to remind you all that this is, again, a great way to let Tanium know what additional information you would like to get about their solution. Obviously, we're just scratching the surface here. You know, we get a short period of time, so there's lots more to follow up on. And you're all busy people, and you have busy lives. So why don't you knock one thing off your to-do list just by checking that box there and let Tanium send you the information that you need. All right, my friend, are we ready to jump into some questions here? Jeff, you still with me? Did we lose you?
Sounds great.
Okay. All right, awesome. Let's jump in. So we are getting a couple of questions. First of all, I do want to tell you, you're getting quite a few high fives and thank yous for the awesome presentation. I think covering a lot of we're getting a lot of the fear today, the really important reminders. But, you know, one thing I do want to mention, I really resonated with the sort of you can't protect what you don't know. And I think that seems so obvious. And when you hear it, you go, yeah, of course. And then, but then, you know, we're not doing anything to fix it. So thank you for bringing that up and to everyone's attention today. Question here from Rolando. Does Tanium support remote control of endpoint management?
It does across the board. So not only do we have an ability to do screen remote control, but the power of the Tanium platform is the ability to remediate at scale at any asset and any connection across the board, whether that's Windows, Linux, or Mac.
Perfect. Nice, easy yes on that one. Joe's wondering about how this might function with IoT devices.
Sure, great question. You know, one of the things we say broadly, Tanium is always consistently trying to get into new market spaces. From an IoT environment, we're installed in a variety of very critical infrastructures across the board, and truly can control what's allowable and controllable with an environment. But obviously, that's going to vary in an OT environment. But we do quite a bit of discovery and asset management, as well as patching in most or all of the OT environments that we work in.
Perfect. Okay, we have a couple of questions about compliance and keeping up with compliance requirements. In particular, Erica is actually wondering if you have any thoughts on, she asked how many different vendors should a company use to help mitigate threats, or do you think you can do that with sort of, and maintain compliance? Or do you think you can maybe, if we can't give us a specific number, if there's an approach that you can recommend taking?
You know, I think that it goes through with a lot of different conversations when it comes to threat and vulnerability management. There's a lot of belt and suspender type approaches. So I don't think there's any one solution that will ultimately give you the right answer. One of the biggest advantages of the Tanium platform is our ability to scan for vulnerabilities on an authenticated basis on any asset across the board. And then our cloud platform allows you to also do your remote unauthenticated scanning as well. So those really are the two portions of the core portions of any vulnerability management program. But again, as you think through that, you need things like threat intelligence to actually think about how you want to patch those things and whether the risk is bigger or greater in your environment based on the threats that might exist. So what I encourage all of our customers that we talk with and all of my friends and family that do this for a living is to make sure you have the ability to understand everything on your network, regardless of whether it is a OS-based asset or it's other high-value assets like network devices, and you make sure that they're patched and managed appropriately based on the threat intensity that may exist in your environment.
Yeah, I like that. So it's not just, and don't we wish that it was all as simple as, well, if you have 3 vendors, then you're set. It's finding the right solution that's going to work for you. And on that note, we did get a question about scalability and the size of an organization. So is Tanium going to be able to work, A, for any size organization, and B, to scale potentially with a growing company as well?
Absolutely. So the Tanium platform scales almost infinitely. We work with all 5 branches of the military, the U.S. military, and have as many as 1 million endpoints under management at any one given client at a time, and works at small organizations as well, giving you that complete plane of control across the board, whether you're 100 endpoints or 1 million. So absolutely.
I love that. That's awesome. Yeah, and it makes a big difference, especially. Oh, and look, we just got a message from Leo who's saying Tanium scales beautifully. So that's, you've got verification from the audience here. And that is really important, I think, for a lot of our folks here, is making sure that any decision they make is not going to give them a limited scope for time frame. Question here from Laura, wondering about the visibility that's provided into attacks, and can the solution respond automatically to them?
Sure. So, like any solution out there, we can actually ingest any IOA or IOC that the customer likes to use. We have a variety of methodologies to bring that into our platform. If you're using our investigation module or threat response, from a remediation standpoint, can we do that automatically? That's where we scale with our partners that do SOAR platforms, whether that's Sentinel, where we have a big integration, particularly with Microsoft, but also do that with our other partners as well, both Palo Alto and Splunk, but many other SOAR platforms as well, to take the telemetry out of those attacks and then ultimately do automated remediation or quarantine as you see fit.
Now, you talked a lot about visibility, and we were talking about that just before we jumped into questions, the importance of being able to see and you know, just chatting about having that insight into an attack. So I think, you know, the audience has a pretty clear idea of why that's important. But can you give us some specifics on visibility supporting a defense in-depth strategy?
Sure. Great question. So ultimately, right, I think as we talked about in the presentation earlier, it's all about knowing all of the assets you have, because again, if you don't know everything, you don't know where it all sits and the posture that it has, your defense in-depth strategy falls apart, right? Each one of those controls that you might have, whether it is having good patch hygiene, or whether it is golden image configuration and drift, right, or perhaps the use of excessive use of privileged access, right, and managing that down. If without the detailed visibility into each one of those aspects, which Tanium can give you, you are likely to have a circumstance where you have an asset that is not in compliance with your own policy or your best practice. And so ultimately, you believe a control may exist in somewhere in your layered strategy that someone is looking to exploit and will exploit because you didn't know that the asset was out of compliance. So that's really where we support very heavily in your defense in-depth conversation, is to ensure compliance across the board, but not only to find those things out of compliance, but fix them at scale, right? Across the board, whether that's making a software deployment, whether that is patching vulnerabilities, or whether that's making sure that your tool sets are adequately put out in the environment, or making sure that you have things like minimize blast radius around privileged user accounts, or frankly, even basic user accounts.
Well, perfect. I wish we could keep digging in, but I think that's actually a great place to leave it. Before you run away from us, if somebody is really excited to jump in, wants to get started with Tanium, what do they do? What's their first step?
First step is www.tanium.com and go to the contact page. Again, as the former speaker said before, we'll get back to you probably within 24 hours across the board, and put you in touch with your local account team.
Perfect. I love that. Well, honestly, Jeff, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I think we all got some great information, and I do want to let everyone else in the audience know all the questions that you asked that we didn't get to. We're going to make sure that the Tanium team does see them, so you will get answers back, because there were a lot. You got a lot of questions coming in, and thank you very much for taking the time to chat with us today.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
All right, and I'm leaving that poll question up for just a second longer. I do want to remind you all to go check out the Tanium Solution Brief in the Handouts tab. It's Tanium Risk Assessment, Know Your Risk Score, your IT Risk Score. So you can assess the risk of all your endpoints against multiple vectors in 5 days at no cost, 5 days, no cost. So if that sounds interesting, and I know that it does, go click on that link and check it out. All right, well, we're going to move right along because we've got a couple more presentations to get to. And oh, look at that. We also have a prize giveaway. So right now, we're going to give away a $300 Amazon gift card. Quick reminder that you do need to be here present at the summit in order to win. So our next lucky winner of a $300 Amazon gift card, let's see how I do this time, folks. Noralee Ayala of Connecticut. Noralee Ayala of Connecticut, you have won a $300 Amazon gift card, and I have turned my brain back on. So that's a win-win for everybody. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after the webinar. Don't forget, still lots more chances to win today, plus that best question card from each session. So keep getting those questions in, again, both because it's awesome and because you might win a prize. And moving right along in our presentation today, we have another incredible expert to take us through some really cool information. We're going to hear from Frank Fisher. He's the Senior Product Marketing Manager at Sneak. I always love the Sneak presentations. You guys have some of the best graphics around. Frank, thank you so much for joining us here today. I know you have some great content lined up for us, so the platform is all yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I hope I don't disappoint you because most of the slides are my work here. So let's see. So welcome, everybody. My name, as said, is Frank Fisher. I'm the product marketing manager of one of our products, actually the static code analysis product. And this is also a bit of the, so to say, the focus that I would like to talk about because when we're talking about the elements of a layered security program, in my perspective, it all starts with the source code. It all starts with, your first line of defense is your own code. And this is something that we want to explore a bit here in the next few minutes. So the first thing that I have, and I think this is like a rule, like a law to do this, is to start with a bit of stats, with a bit of statistics. And it's actually, this one is quite old. It's actually from the year 2002. It was kind of proven several times. But as you can see, we have the states of software development, the software development life cycle, as the x-axis. It starts by requirement, coding, integration, beta, post-release. This was done prior to things like DevOps, for example. So as you can see, this is a very classical process, and DevOps even makes the whole situation even worse in this regard. But what was found back then was that when you address an issue, when you address an issue within the life cycle of your software, obviously, the later the issue gets addressed in your development life cycle, the more expensive it gets. And I picked the coding to the post-release. Obviously, if an issue makes it from coding towards your customers to the live your production environment, obviously this is very costly, and they found like 2.5 times the costs are there. So I think intuitively we all understand where this comes from. What's the problem here? The longer a bug exists within your source code, the longer it is within your application, the harder it gets to kind of fix it in a way and then run the whole software development lifecycle again, because you have to do the testing again, you have to do the deployment again, all of these things. This all adds up to being quite expensive. So when you are now shifting a bit into the new DevOps world, you see that there's actually a bit of a split in between. On the left side, we have the application developers, so the front-end developers, the back-end developers, writing Go, writing JavaScript, writing TypeScript, whatever programming language you have there. They own the app development side of it. They own the coding and maybe a bit of the integration testing and stuff like this. On the right side, we see the platform developers or DevOps team. And what we see very, very often is that these are either different people. So you have application developer and DevOps people in one team, but you have distinct different developers looking at the different sides of it. Or you even have a kind of an individual DevOps team. So you have an application development team, and you have the DevOps team that is then responsible for operations side. So taking this or having this in mind, let's sort of say take the next step and think about the modern development process, and where can tool help the different parts of the developer. And what you can see here is the split in the SNCC tool set. So the application developers, they are doing the proprietary code. They're doing the code that makes you, that is your specific application. And they're looking at SNCC code for static code analysis. And they're also looking at the dependencies they're introducing using open source libraries. Today, we know that depending on which survey you look at, which survey you believe, we have between 60% up to 80, 90% of the source code of a modern application is actually the open source dependency. So there is quite a massive amount of code that they have to look after. So they are looking at this, and then you have the DevOps guys, and they are more interested in this kind of a more operational side look at it, meaning the containers, meaning the infrastructure as code. And we have two products that are actually focusing on this regard. And based is it all on a security and educational part, because we believe that you as a developer, you are interested in getting better every time. So when there is something that we find, we not only tell you what the issue is here, we try to help you to fix it, but we also educate you in how to prevent it and how to make it better. Now, when we are, so to say, projecting ourselves now in the world of DevOps, what is the problem here? Why is this kind of an issue, and why is this broken? Well, you all know the 8, the character 8, the infinity symbol that is kind of symbolizing the DevOps process. And when you think about the DevOps process and you look at it, you have the two loops. You have the inner loop, which is the left side of it, and you have an outer loop, which is the right side of it. So the inner loop is what happens within the application developer's world and workflow. And the outer loop is literally when the developer hands over the code to the operational side of it, and it then gets released, deployed, operated, and monitored. And what we see is very, very often we see a split. We see a broken link in between these two flows that normally make up the DevOps. And normally make up, I think DevOps, you have to understand that it's the kind of agile process that we're talking about. You know, you want to have a very smooth, agile process that works very easy to incremental, to help incremental software releases to be put out there. So it needs to work very smooth, needs to work very fast. So one thing we are observing is the scans happen very, very late in the process. There's a code audit and the release part of it. There is an infrastructure audit happening. And all of this doesn't really help the developer to produce good code to start with. If you think back to what I said in the beginning here, we have the 2.5 times, so to say, cost downside. It's very, very late in the process, and it doesn't help us in this regard. So one of the things was, let's shift left. You know, let's have this closer to the developer. Let's try to make it faster and get it closer to the developer. What we see here is very, very often, besides the fact that it's still kind of late in the process, we see that there's a lot of expertise required. The developers, they are kind of overwhelmed with what they get here. They get a report, but they have to interpret it. They have to, so to say, act upon it, and this is a problem. And what comes on top of it is that more and more now trying to push even more left and trying to integrate the findings that we have when we are scanning our code, to integrate this in the IDE, so in the workbench of the developer, which obviously probably is the most shift left you can get in this regard. The problem that we see here is these IDE scans are most of the time trimmed down, watered down scans. Why? Because such a scan is a complex thing. It takes some time, it takes some CPU, and the developer machine might not be equipped for this. And I had a customer telling me that with a legacy tool, a scan of the project took 3 weeks. So a developer will not wait for 3 weeks in front of the IDE for the results to come back. So what is done is it's watered down. The IDE plugin is taking the results from the backend, is trying to overlay it. Well, it's kind of, but not really where we want to be. So where do we, well, summarizing it, where's the problem that we see? We have lots of tools that the developer gets. These tools are sometimes very confusing. The reports are not really helpful. It's happening very late. And on the other side, from a security perspective, the security is often in the role to block the whole process because they find something, then they stop the release, they put a ticket backwards, and they have to wait for the developer to kind of react on it and work upon it. What is also a problem for the security people is very, very often they are getting a bottleneck. Because everybody is waiting for them to triage the findings they have. Now, imagine 3 weeks after after the coding was done, the results of the scan come in, then you need another week to kind of wade your way through it, triage it, and then you are putting this backwards as tickets towards the developer. And you can imagine it's not it's not a nice job to do to start with. It's also something that is, the developers don't like it in this regard. So it's a kind of a letdown for everybody involved in the process. So where do you want to go? What would be the optimal position in this regard? And if you are comparing the traditional application security with the developer first idea that we have here in Smith, is that you test it after the development. And what we want to change with this is we want to have continuous testing. So instead of testing being one of the waterfalls, more or less, within your agile process, the idea is to come to what we call DevSecOps. That means that security is an inherent part of every step in the DevOps process. And this means you don't accumulate things to a certain point and then go back and try to fix it, but you're fixing it as soon as possible in your flow that you have without sacrificing any kind of security. So with this, we are also moving from an audit-based idea, so having your waterfalls there, doing the audit and then rubber stamp things, towards a fix-based approach. Because everything that is a report and everything that is nice on the scorecard is simply that. It is nice on the scorecard. It hasn't improved your security at all. Your security improves when somebody does a fix. And normally this somebody is a developer. So the developer touches the code, does a fix, and rolls out the fix. This is the moment when your security improves. And this is what we are working towards too. So a fix-based approach. And moving from a code and infrastructure secure independently, so having this process being, so to say, split apart, having different tools, having a different viewpoint on things, different information sources, towards a holistic, and we are in the cloud-native world here, in the holistic cloud-native context that we are looking at. So looking at the different tools that I just showed you, the code and the open source tool, which is possibly more interesting for the application developer. Then you have the container and the IAC, which is probably the tool the DevOps guys are working every day with. But as a security professional, what I'm literally looking for is the holistic view. Show me all the findings of all of these tools and enable me to make intelligent decisions over what is happening with these tools and what the results are from these tools. So what we are looking at is govern the security at scale and remove all of these frictions. So we're getting away from manually stitching together and wading through the findings that you have, doing the triage, towards empowering the developers in this, and being able to shift it left onto the dashboard of the developers, let them do the majority of the lift. And then simply what is left over is needed to be triaged and stuff like this, but is much, much, much lower than the initial load that you had. Being helpful with prioritizing these things. Prioritizing in a way that we try to cluster, for example, similar issues together. So when a developer understands how to fix the issue of type A, why not addressing the rest 5-6 incidents that you have with the same type all at once? Because now you understand how it works, just do all of them together. So one idea that we have is prioritizing needs also to cluster these elements so that it's easy to address them. And going away from a ticket management perspective, where security was literally a source of tickets that were, so to say, flown back to the developer backlog and hopefully addressed, towards a more governance-oriented idea, where we literally say everybody is empowered, every step is able to be part of the security process that you have underlying your DevOps process. And since you are, so to say, governing it, since you are looking over it, nothing is creeping through the cracks, nothing is bleeding in. You can assure that every step has a certain quality bar when it's exited and another step is taken. So from our perspective, what we are looking at is the idea that we have on the left side our 4 tools: the code, open source, the containers and infrastructure. As I said, they are addressing different developers, but they are working nicely together, and they are also informing each other in this regard. Then what we have is we can go through the DevOps process with a kind of a unified policy that we have. So we're going from the code base to the cloud, so from your code to the real production environment. There, we have the idea to set up a product that is called Snyk Cloud. It was announced recently, and the idea that we have here is to see the other 4 products as a data source within the Snyk Cloud, but also to look at what is your current cloud, how is your current cloud being, say, set up, what is the configuration of it, how does this configuration differ from the configuration that you had in mind when you were setting up the source code, and informing backwards. So taking this kind of information to enrich the information that you have with the different tools in there. And maybe last example in this perspective is Log4j. When you think about Log4j, this was a problem in a Java library, very, very common Java library. And what could have happened, and what happened with a lot of our customers, was that our open source dependency tool alarmed them about a problem they have in their open source dependencies, that one of these dependencies, several of these dependencies, are actually vulnerable to Log4j. Okay, so this is an alarming situation. You need to react on it. It was a quite high severity issue. But maybe your infrastructure as a code informs you that while you have this vulnerability, it's not exploitable because the port that you need to exploit it is actually blocked from the outside. So as long as you have this port blocked, yes, you still have the vulnerability and you still should address it. But maybe you don't need to call up your engineering manager in the middle of the night and ask him to come to the office immediately to fix it right away. So by combining these kind of informations, you get a much more detailed, a much more actionable view over your situation, over the way your application is configured and is running in this regard. So next step or next question that you can ask in this perspective is maybe you know Snyk, maybe you don't know Snyk. And I'm asked very, very often about to give a bit of a detail. What is Snyk? What is Snyk all about? What does Snyk do? And the idea that I wanted to show here on this slide was to show you that Snyk is a company that let's say merges 2 things together. So on the one side is developer first idea. So having developer empowering tools that are literally working within the developer IDE, within the developer workbench, enabling the developer to start with. But on the other side, we are a very deep and a very trusted source of the security environment in this regard. So, for example, to take the security intelligence that we have here, that we are using in our open source product, for example, it's able to identify sooner than any other database because there's a team of people behind it that is 24/7 working on scanning the internet, finding vulnerabilities, and adding these vulnerabilities to the database, finding out what is the remedy, making it such that we provide clear guidance on how to remedy it, even so far that we offer a one-click remedy when we can, when we know you absolutely have to update to this version, and we can simply do it, and we do it as a PR request for you. We are very proud of being having very low false positive rates in this regard. This database actually is used by industry leaders like the AWS, the Amazon Cloud, for example, like Google is using it. So this is part. Docker is one of our partners in this respect. We are part of the Linux Open Source Foundation and stuff like this. So we are really well received in the security world. There's another aspect to it. And there's like the second bullet point here that says proprietary research and then machine learning. What we have with SNCC's code is a tool that is actually based on research work that was done in a Swiss university over like a decade of research flew into this product. It's actually a new proprietary version of a logic analyzer that we're using to analyze source code and to learn from the source code. So what we are doing is we are able to be, since we're very, very fast in this regard, we are using 120 to 150,000 open source projects, and I mean really big open source projects per language, to train our system against this data that we have there. We are using then the information that we have from our vulnerability database against this to enrich it and to have a really, really good training data set for a machine learning that we are setting on top of it. So our security engineers, together with the machine learning part, are literally building the knowledge base and the rule sets for the static analysis. And this is unique in the market. This is something that you will not find anywhere else. So what we can do with this is we're constantly learning, we're constantly adding things to that. And the rule base and the knowledge base is constantly growing in this regard. So this is something that makes us special. And in this perspective, we are very, very innovative. On the one side, we are well received within the security community. We're well connected, as well as being a developer-first company, having a focus on the developer, empowering the developer with our tools in this. So as a summary, what I wanted to show you was the idea of DevSecOps, where you need to go into if you want to combine DevOps, so being able to fly with this agile process of DevOps in this regard, but also to not break it by introducing security and multi-layered security into it. And this is actually where SNCC positions itself. We believe that we have to start with the developer to be as shift left as possible, to be as cost effective as possible, but also to empower the security personnel to keep an eye on things, to understand where things are moving, and to govern the environment. So this was what I wanted to show you from a slide perspective. I want to invite you to literally experience it yourself. So SNCC is for free. If you go to the SNCC website, sncc.io, you can sign up for a SNCC account and you can enjoy the SNCC tools for free to start with. There's a limitation of about 100 scans per month. If you are an open source project, no limitations at all. You can use it forever. There's no limitations in the engine strength. So with your GitHub account or with your Gmail account or whatever, you can sign this up. You don't need a credit card or anything, and you can scan real code and you can see what the results are. This might be open source, but this might also be your own project in this regard. If you also want to see the product in action, we are super happy to set up a half an hour virtual meeting and to literally show you the product in action and to answer any question that you might have in this regard. Just go on the website again, sncc.io, and set up a meeting with us. Half an hour, every question that you will have is answered, and we will make it live. You will see the product in action in this regard. Good. So that was me.
Well, that was wonderful. Thank you so much, Frank, for such a great presentation. We have a ton of questions coming in. Before we jump into those questions, though, I do want to point out that we've put that poll up on the screen. So what we're wondering here is, what additional information would you like about the SNCC solution? So for everybody out there that had a question, we're going to get to as many of them as we can. But we're not going to get to all of them. And so this is a really great, easy way for you to make sure that you are getting answers to the questions that you've asked. So make sure that you take a moment right now, click on that poll, let Sneak know what additional information you want wherever you're at in this research journey that you're on, and they'll make sure that they follow up with you. All right, so Frank, while folks are clicking on the poll, should we jump into some questions here?
Yes, sure. Go ahead. Love this.
Okay. Well, I do want to tell you, apparently there's quite a few people out there who agree. So you said you made a lot of these slides yourself. We got a lot of folks chiming in and saying how much they enjoyed the look of the presentation, which sounds silly, but it really makes a difference when we're, right? When you're looking at all this information, you're trying to take a lot of stuff in, it can be hard. So thank you for making a really engaging presentation. I want to ask this question here from Rob. He's wondering, what are the differences among Sneak Test, Monitor, and Protect?
Test, monitor, and protect. Good question to start with. Good question. Obviously, I have to think to make a real crisp and nice answer to that. So the idea that we have is that it all starts with testing. So if you're thinking about the software development lifecycle that you have, we offer tools that help you by testing, by scanning the environment as soon as possible. And we are looking from a developer perspective. So we are looking at static code analysis, composition analysis, so stuff like this. We're looking from a source code perspective on it. And we can actually do this before the software even compiles or even runs in any way or something like this. So this is our first step. And by doing this, we also don't want only to like scan it and report it and be happy with the report. We want you to right away fix it. So what you will see in Snyk when you're trying it yourself, you will see whenever we point out something, we make sure you are empowered to fix it right away. We will not only give you the location where it is, but also how other people fixed in the same issue or same situation they had, how they fixed it, how the fix needs to look like, stuff like this. So we will give you lots and lots of information to make it actionable. So scanning also means fixing right away. And this is something that we continuously do over the whole software development life cycle. So when you're working in the IDE, when you're doing the coding, when you're doing PRs, so you're checking in the code and you're doing the peer review, we help with the peer review. We scan again, we give results to the peer review, and we can literally run in every step in the CI/CD pipeline that you have there to get your software to the production side of it. As soon as it's in the production side, we look at the differences between what your initial configuration was, what your idea was on how this the cloud needs to look like and stuff like this, and the reality. So there's a thing that is called good drift. So sometimes you experiment, and sometimes you find out if I don't know, use a different node type, I can save a bit of money in the cloud. So you do this and you experience that you do save money. So this is a good drift. You want to have this in the future deployment also. And then you have bad drift, where something bad happened and your admin was on Hawaii. So we opened up some ports that the guy was able to fix the thing over the hotel wireless, and after this, we forgot to close the ports again. Okay, I'm making this up now, but you can imagine where this goes. And this is bad drift, and we want to what we do is we highlight this to you, and we help you to fix it in a way that the good drift you are taking in to the new default, and the bad drift you are, switching off, you are remedying. And I think with this, you see where our philosophy is regarding the test part, the protecting part, the monitoring part, where all of this comes in, and kind of flows back also to the developer again, in helping the developer to be the fixer, to address problems that are there. So I hope this answered the question. Yep.
That was a great answer. It's a big question, so you did a great job breaking that down.
Yes.
I really wish that we could keep going, Frank. Unfortunately, we are going to have to leave it there. But before you sign off, if somebody is looking to take their first step with Sneak, what do they do? You mentioned that free opportunity to get started. We saw a few people kind of raise their hands at that. Is that the first step? How do they jump in?
Yes, that is a great first step. And I always say, experiencing it yourself is the best way of getting to know a product and stuff like this. So if you go to the website, you can literally sign up. As I said, within 4 clicks, you can sign up to Snyk and you can get the first results rolling in, and you can see how it works for you, how it behaves. If you have questions, if you want to have your very private demo, as I said, there's another button on the website, snyk.io, SNYK.io. There's another button on the website to get a demo, to book some of my colleagues for half an hour, and then have a demo, have every question answered that you might have. This is another good way of getting in contact and trying it yourself.
Perfect. And I totally agree with you. I think getting in, trying out a solution is the best way to find out whether or not it's going to work for you. Sounds obvious, I know, but I think we forget that. We speak so much in the theoretical. So it's important to get real with it, get your hands on it. Thank you so much, Frank. That was an incredible presentation. Again, lots of appreciation coming in from the audience, so I know that resonates. I do want to remind everybody that we will make sure that Frank and the Snyk crew, the Snyk team, get all of the questions asked in the session today. So if you asked a question that we didn't get to, you will get a follow-up after the fact. So please do keep those questions coming in because we'll make sure that we get you some answers. Frank, thank you again so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And to everyone who filled out that poll, a big thank you to you as well. Again, that's a great way to get some information to Snyk, how you would like them to follow up with you, and obviously is a nice way to make your life a little bit easier too. Let's keep moving along here because we have, look at that, time for another prize giveaway. So I'm going to remind you all that you do need to be present here at the webinar. Oh my goodness, before I give a prize away, that's a false prize, false alarm on the prize. I want to step back once because I want to remind you to head on over to your handouts tab, click on the Snyk link, which is going to take you over to the Snyk Security Hub. So there's a ton of resources. There's all these kinds of cheat sheets, tips, tricks for keeping your application secure right there in one place. It's a really cool little resource hub. I love clicking around in there, so please do go check it out before we wrap today and make sure you've got that saved on your browser and go spend some time exploring a little bit later. Okay, so that was handout time. Back to prize time. As Leo says, that's his favorite time. Leo, I hear you, man. I hear you. Okay. So $300 Amazon gift card if you are here present at the webinar. Lucky winner here with us today is Matthew Krupski. Matthew Krupski of Connecticut. Congratulations to Matthew Krupski of Connecticut. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after the webinar. Now, don't forget, folks, if you're feeling sad out there, there is still one more chance to win a prize today, plus that best question card from each session, so keep those questions coming in. And let's go ahead and move along with our presentations here because folks, I don't know how this happens. I say this every time. I always think there's going to be more presentations, and then all of a sudden, here we are at our last presentation of the day. So this is our very last presentation of the summit, and we are definitely ending on a high note. We've got 3 incredible expert presenters here with us that are going to have a little bit of a free-flow discussion, which I just love. So we're going to hear from Grace Andrews, Principal Product Evangelist at Equinix Metal, Peter Mahoney, Senior Manager, Sales Engineering at Dell Technologies, and Glenn Deckhazer, Principal Solutions Architect at Equinix. So Grace, Peter, and Glenn, thank you so much for being here on the summit today to bring us home in style. Grace, I think you're going to kick us off here today, so I'm going to hand the mic right on over to you.
So I'm Grace Andrews, and I'm a Principal Product Evangelist here at Equinix Metal. And today I'm joined by Peter Mahoney, who is a Senior Manager of Sales Engineering at Dell Technologies, and Glenn Deckhazer, who is a Principal Solutions Architect here at Equinix. And before we get started, I want to do a little bit of framing around what we're going to be talking about today and what we're identifying as the problem that we're helping to solve. So here are a couple of stats and figures that are from a global tech trends survey that we did this year in 2022. And so you'll see here, one of the first questions that help us to better understand what we're talking about today is how people are deploying to the cloud. So we see that there's hybrid cloud, private cloud, and public cloud, with hybrid cloud having the most amount of respondents across the globe, basically saying that it's a main part of their component of digital first strategies. And that's really important to keep in mind because, in a world where a lot of people are more familiar with either private or public cloud life, this hybrid cloud infrastructure really is one that is everywhere and is a part of the future. And then when we think about what that means, we really have to ask ourselves, well, what are the expectations around cloud migrations? And you can see here that a lot of our surveyed respondents said that they will move more functions to the cloud. So as they go into this hybrid cloud model, they're actually going to be taking a lot of their resources, a lot of their functionality there. And that's really important to think about in a global connected market. And the final figure that I want to introduce to help us with our framing today is the kind of threats that exist to the business and to overall business success as people move into this digital first strategy market. And I do want to emphasize a couple of points, one being around cyber attacks, security breaches, right? A lot of times when we think of threats to business, we may think of global shortages, or we may think of a shortage in talent. But the truth of the matter is, according to the respondents, a lot of people are really concerned about security, especially around cybersecurity and the potential for data leaks. And I think that that really serves as a good backdrop for what Glenn and Peter are going to be talking about today. So I'll go ahead and pass it off to Glenn and Peter.
So today, we're going to be talking about a solution that addresses many of the dynamics that Grace was talking about. First of all, we have customers that are moving dramatically quickly to the hybrid cloud, the multi-cloud, and are still relying on data protection architectures that they designed years ago, hoping that they would extend somehow to these other locations. However, we're finding that there's a big stress on the organization, and companies that find themselves victimized by cyber attacks, or that simply need to restore data from physical data loss or some sort of human error, are finding that their data protection architectures and operations aren't up to the challenge. And so what Dell and Equinix have come together with Equinix's global locality and interconnectivity and married it with Dell's data domain technology, which reduces the amount of data not just stored on a device, but that can be transmitted from a source to a target. Combine this into a solution that is a very forward-thinking architecture for metro-located backup targets for lots of different backup software. Peter, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, so first of all, Glenn and Grace, thank you very much for the opportunity to join this tech talk. And this is one of the biggest topics right now in Dell Technologies. We have a great story around cyber recovery, but as you know, Grace, you kind of hit it in the very beginning. Everybody's moving to a cloud or with a hybrid cloud mindset. Cyber recovery and cyber attacks are like the number one topic that CISOs, CIOs, IT departments are having conversations with. Now, Dell Technologies, we have a great story around cyber protection and how to recover from a ransomware attack. But honestly, when we partnered with Equinix, this is where the solution really came together. How do you provide customers that really want that cyber resiliency with the whole concept of a hybrid cloud and a cloud mentality? So that's where I'm really excited about how our offerings have come together to provide these solutions for the marketplace.
It's a good time to talk about Equinix Metal. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
And I think you're going to actually hit on this, Glenn, as you kind of talk about how Equinix Metal fits into this model. You're using words like resiliency and flexibility, and I'm curious if you could define what that means in the model we're looking at and the way in which our solutions are knit together to provide that.
So resiliency represents the ability to come back from an event quickly, which is extremely important. It's one thing to do a backup job, but the reason we do backup is to restore. And so if you can't restore within an acceptable service level, then your business is going to suffer. and that has a real cost associated with it. Most organizations haven't updated their architectures to accommodate for hybrid multi-cloud. Maybe they're starting to back up inside of a cloud, and most customers we speak to don't like the idea that they have production workloads in a specific cloud, and then they're also backing up those workloads into that same cloud. The customers we speak to are telling us that this is a risk that no one has really addressed. Well, the solution that we put together here does address that. And Equinix Metal, to give a little introduction to that platform, is the ability to put single tenant bare metal servers and network adjacent to the multi-cloud, also adjacent to metros in which customers may have resources, assets, locations of their own, either inside the Equinix platform itself or perhaps in a remote site local to that site. That allows us to have what we'll call a data pivot point, where all backups from that area can come in from some backup software that is compatible with Data Domains technology, deduplicate that data so that we can avoid expensive egress charges from the public clouds, and also make the most out of our network links, and store that data on Equinix Metal running Data Domain, the virtual edition. So this allows us to have data located in various metros as depicted in this diagram. Don't worry about the metro names themselves, but it could be any of our 19 metros that we have Equinix Metal available in today, and be able to restore that data that is now located on the Data Domain Virtual Edition on Equinix Metal to any of the sites that are located either proximate by the multi-cloud, the various cloud providers, and we connect to over 1,200 providers, service providers on our Equinix Fabric, or to customers' sites within Equinix platform or through their own on-prem sites. This capability happens at a much faster rate than it would be in the cloud itself, because we're leveraging all-flash technology. And this allows us to do things with Data Domain that you typically can't do when you're in the cloud. We actually have the capability of restoring a cloud workload back to that same cloud faster than you could if you put Data Domain VE in that same cloud. So that ability gives you a faster restore. Again, that's why we're doing all this, from some sort of a cyber event or simply a loss of data through human error, right? And in the cloud, a lot of that happens.
And so, Grace, I also want to come back to the cyber resiliency, right? So in Dell Technologies, we talk about a cyber plan. And the solution that we've partnered with Equinix is one element of a plan, right? So you have the CISO organizations, there's network monitoring tools, there's Active Directory, making sure that the right people have the right access to data, outside threat vectors. For those of you that remember the Log4j, where there was capabilities for bad actors or hackers to pretty much access server infrastructure through web portals, these are all real threat vectors that CISO organizations are fighting. And the solution that we have created, both Dell Technologies and Equinix, is a part of that plan. Hey, in the event that you've done everything possible to try and prevent an attack from happening or a cyber ransomware event, in the event that you are hit and you have to recover from that, you're going to be looking to your backup and restore environments. And like a great example of this is the Colonial Pipeline. It brought the eastern United States to its knees, and all because a hacker organization came in and impacted the billing database for those oil productions. So they could ship the oil. There was no issue with shipping oil. They just couldn't bill people. And so rather than charge customers revenue that they may not have incurred, they had to wait and restore the entire database from backup. And so that's what we're trying to create from a solution here, is that, hey, look, the CISO organizations with real-time threat monitoring, that's all important, without a doubt. But in the event that you are attacked, you're going to be looking to your recovery and backup systems to put that data back. And many times now, ransomware is deliberately targeting your DR copies and your backup application software and hardware to destroy that data, because if they can impact that environment, they can pretty much guarantee that they're going to get a payday. And so part of the solution that we've created with Equinix on Metal is really important. So a couple things that customers really want nowadays, they want a cloud-like experience, and that's what Metal provides. And they want the ability to provide software-defined capabilities. And that's the real value here, is that I can take software licenses and I can bring it into the Equinix Metal environment, and I can leverage your fabric to connect to anywhere. You have, 4,400 different interconnected points all over the globe, spanning from AWS, Azure, GCP, OCI, IBM Cloud, and various destination endpoints. These are extremely powerful statements or capabilities that end customers are relying on to provide a cyber resiliency to come back from an attack. So that's why I love this offering that we've put together.
I think that that's a really great segue into, maybe this is a statement I'm making or maybe it's a question, but a lot of times, what you just said, people will, for instance, attack your reserves. They'll go where they know you would go for your backups to ensure they get paid, right? So if your disaster recovery plan is really contingent on backups that live on the cloud, other clouds, etc., something I've heard Glenn say is that there is a best practice to protect your public cloud data outside of a given cloud provider. And I think that that's an interesting part of the solution as well. And I've got a diagram here that I'd love for you all to apply some of what you've been saying to, because this hybrid multi-cloud data protection and projection, image that we're looking at is really impactful and important for risk, for mitigating risk and decreasing, risk, and also increasing resiliency, right? And so I'm curious how the integration and the relationship between the tools work in this kind of framework.
Well, in this particular example, we're showing all of that, plus we're adding the extra dimension of business flexibility, right? And giving the leverage over your data back to the owner rather than to a cloud provider that would hold it hostage with tremendous egress. Again, it's one of the things that customers don't like about having cloud providers provide their own backup using the same cloud resources, right? It provides not just a risk, but it also creates even greater data gravity in a place that the customer does not control. The whole point is that on Equinix Metal and on the platform Equinix, the customer's in total control of their environment. So in this particular example, as we number the different, in order the different operations, first we have a workload that's running in AWS, and we have some backup software. It doesn't, any of the backup software that Data Domain integrates with, and there's a litany of them, not just from Dell, but from also Dell's third-party partners, that would back that data up from AWS, send it over Equinix Fabric, which connects, again, over 1,200 different partners, over to the Data Domain Virtual Edition in Equinix Metal. And that is a specifically engineered device built to run Data Domain Virtual Edition at the highest possible performance levels. That Data Domain data now can be either restored back to AWS, as we see in the green, where we can restore that data at about 4x or more the speed of what it would have taken if you had that same technology located within AWS. This is not because of Data Domain run differently in the cloud. It's simply because in the cloud you're running with a shared network architecture and a lot of network limitations and architectures that prohibit maximum performance of the application. We are giving Data Domain Virtual Edition all of the power it requires for maximum performance, local with our Flash and NVMe devices. Now, that's great. So we can take the data from AWS, provide a 75% reduction using Data Domain's technology, as well as the reduced cost of egress using Equinix Fabric and Private Interconnect to that Data Domain and restore it, again, more than 4x the speed of in the cloud. But talk about the business flexibility. And now we have the capability of taking that data and perhaps restoring it to a different cloud. If you want to try a SQL database that was in AWS and restore it to Azure to try something out, you need to only restore the data from the DDBE on Equinix Metal to Azure using another Equinix Fabric connection, which you can create in 5 minutes or less, or even automate it through Terraform or Ansible, and create a new outcome for your business. Should you want to repatriate data, and 49% of businesses these days have repatriated a cloud workload, either one or more over the last year, Equinix Metal provides a great place to spin up new hosts and restore the data from Data Domain Virtual Edition right to hosts on Equinix Metal very quickly, and create more of a private cloud outcome. So again, this opens up a whole world of optionality and gives you back leverage over your data, and also gives you sovereign control over that data for you to do what you want and take egress out of the business decision when you do so.
And also, I want to add some of the great choices that we made with Metal. So Glenn kind of articulated that, these are running on all-flash PowerEdge servers. I really want to accentuate the importance of that. So in Dell Technologies, we have analytics software, and that analytics software integrates with our Data Domain Virtual Edition. What are we doing here? So the benefit of copies of data of backup is that not only can I recover from it, but I want to be able to use that data. So Dell Technologies has created this AI software called CyberSense. And the whole purpose of this software is to provide analytics of your backup data, looking for anomalies or any type of ransomware attack vectors. We use 200 different reports that are looking at the data in various ways, looking for an attack. And the benefit here with an all-flash PowerEdge server, I can scan that data much faster. I can speak on personal experience with this, that as the data sets grow, it's more difficult to scan those workloads, especially when we leverage high-density disk and SAS drives. But again, the value here with the all-flash Metal servers, I can scan that data significantly faster. So not only can I recover the data much faster back to either a various cloud, AWS, Azure, GCP, or back on-prem, but I can let my end user know faster that, hey, this data has been impacted by ransomware. What are my good copies of data? The more data I can scan in a period of time, the better of an outcome that I can provide to you with information. And so that's the other big benefit here, is that I can provide analytics much, much faster to my end users.
I think to add to that, for customers that aren't even using those kind of analytic kind of applications, the ability of Data Domain Virtual Edition running on Equinix Metal to provide that kind of performance reduces time to restore. And that in any event, no matter what application you're using, is a huge value to a customer. So while analytics are absolutely an important part of what Dell brings to the table from a recovery from a cyber attack, and customers should really take a good look at this solution, and it is a widely used solution in the industry today. It's the one I see most. Even in a simple case for customers who are using this technology in a very simple way in the cloud to back up cloud resources, we now have an option for doing it faster in a sovereign way that now gives you a lot more optionality on your data.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. I think that's, it's a lot of information for me, right? I don't get to get my hands on the products as often as I desire to, but it really makes me think about the kinds of customer questions I hear, or that, sometimes secondhand, sometimes firsthand, really about what is disaster recovery? What is resiliency? A lot of time, these questions, they're philosophical in nature, but there are concrete best practices that can be instituted immediately today to get people started. And I guess I'll kick off our Q&A with that. And that is, if someone is trying to come up with a resiliency plan or a restoration strategy in case of disaster or crisis, where do you begin? What are 2 or 3 things that everyone who is new to this journey should do? And if they've been doing it, what are 2 or 3 things that they can use to up-level the kind of resiliency that they're, integrating into their solutions?
So Grace, great question. So let me kind of start with a couple things that we think of as best practices. So number 1, you need to kind of separate disaster recovery from cyber recovery. Those are 2 different events. So number 1, you should always be thinking, hey, is this a DR type of event or is this a cyber recovery event? Because they are 2 different things. And let me provide you a really good example of that, right? So if you have a natural disaster where, a data center is taken out and you don't have corruption to data, most customers have a secondary site, which is many times an Equinix Colo, where they can spin up that data. They've been doing asynchronous or synchronous copies, and great. They're back up and running in a short amount of time. But when you come back from a cyber attack, that's very different. You're trying to figure out where did they attack, what's corrupted, where am I exposed, and what data is good. And so step number one, figure out, are you in a cyber attack recovery scenario, or are you in a disaster recovery scenario? And those are two different planning that you have to take an account for. Other areas that you have to kind of think about is, again, RTOs and RPOs is a very common statement. And again, the big benefit here with Metal is the capability to recover using flash technologies. Those performances are much faster. But you always need to look at not only just infrastructure, such as Active Directory, DNS. So if you are compromised from a cyber attack, the basic plumbing is attacked first. And we've seen this with many customers. Hey, we didn't know we were being attacked. We lost Active Directory. We lost DNS. None of our servers could communicate, and we were completely locked out of the environment. And so that's why it's always important to make sure that the basic plumbing, not only the critical database applications and web applications are protected, but again, those basic plumbing environments as well. Glenn, we'd love to hear your comments on that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fantastic answer. I'll pile on that in the world of Equinix Metal and the Equinix platform, take all of the stuff that Peter just talked about, and then add the ability to spin up an on-demand farm of servers running the applications that to be restored, and also dynamically creating the network connections to get those servers connected into your environment, because you may not be able to or want to restore onto the systems that you were originally running on for lots of different reasons. If they got cyber attacked, you never know if there's something in the BIOS. There's a whole lot of things that have to be done to those servers before you can feel comfortable putting them back into main production, because otherwise you'll be back in the same situation. So we have the ability to spin up new environments quickly to restore to, and that value, if you have the data already on Data Domain VE on Equinix Metal, you are located in an extremely high network bandwidth situation to restore that data onto servers local to that environment, and you'll be back up a lot faster than you would if you had to go and buy servers, set them up in a clean room somewhere, and get them going. This dynamic is extremely valuable to a customer.
Yeah, and Glenn, let me kind of add something to that, because you just kind of reminded me of a story. So, hey, for those listeners, please keep in mind when a customer is impacted by a ransomware attack, hey, here's a fun fact. The FBI gets involved. Here's another fun fact. They confiscate the equipment. So you may be thinking to yourself that, hey, listen, I want to recover. I'm going to lay the information, the backup data. I'm going to recover back to the original infrastructure. Hey, if that infrastructure was compromised, the FBI confiscated. You may be finding yourself without any infrastructure at all. And hey, so here's the value of Metal. You can spin up hardware platforms on demand to leverage compute and storage resources that you can recover into, because you may not have those resources. They may be taken away. So that's a great point. We've actually seen that happen with a lot of our customers. And then they try to order servers from us. And we're like, hey, there's a 6-month lead time for servers right now. There's a supply chain issue still happening in this world of ours. And we can't get those servers fast enough to you. You can't be down for 6 months. And then queue in Metal.
Yep. And just the last point on that is, the Metal doesn't have to be your the resting place, but it's the quickest way to get to that first restore. Once it's there, you can then methodically and at your own pace migrate some of those workloads to various cloud vendors as you see fit, right? So it because of the adjacency of our Equinix Metal to the hyperscalers, the public cloud providers, and our ability to dynamically interconnect to all of them, it gives you tremendous optionality on what happens when things get bad. We're the ones you want to be with when things get bad.
For folks who are watching today or listening, thank you for joining us. We've really enjoyed having your attention. And if you have any additional questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us, and we'll respond as quickly as possible. And a friendly reminder to also look at your resources. They're a great place to get started with DDVE and Equinix Metal. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you can join us next time.
Oh man, what a great discussion. I love being a fly on the wall when we get those kinds of group chats like that, and just kind of feeling like I get to listen in on really smart people talking about really smart things. Thank you so much to Grace, to Peter, and to Glenn for letting us sit in on that conversation. What a wonderful presentation. Lots of great info. Now, you can all see here that I've put up that poll for you. What additional information would you like to get about the Equinix solution? So obviously, we just got a lot of really great information. There's lots more to cover that we're not going to get into. And so if you're looking for a little bit more information right away, as Grace just mentioned, first off, you can head to that handouts tab and explore there. And secondly, you can reach out right here and let Equinix know what additional information you would like to get. So this is a great way to kind of reach out and connect with that team. I want to thank everyone who answered one of the poll questions and also asking questions. I'm seeing lots of high fives coming in. Thanks, Anthony. I agree. Lots of great info there. And, it's really nice to see that. It does make a big difference. I know that it's been a big day. We've covered a lot of information. So I love that you guys are all still here, engaged and participating. And it really does keep that energy up, keeps my energy up. So thank you for that. Who needs coffee when I have all of you? Well, I still need the coffee, clearly. Anyways, while you're looking at that poll there and checking out the handouts tab, I'm going to go ahead and give away a few more prizes because we have come to our very last prize giveaway. So we're going to do one more $300 Amazon gift card, and then I'm going to give away some Samsung Z flip phones. I said Z right that time. Samsung Z flip phones to all of you folks out there. Well, to 3 of you lucky folks out there. You're not all getting, this isn't, you get a flip phone, you get a flip phone. There's 3 winners out there. So we'll get to that in just a moment. I do want to remind you that you do need to be here present at the summit today in order to win. So our last winner of a $300 Amazon gift card today is Mike Parsons of North Carolina. Mike Parsons of North Carolina, you have won an Amazon gift card worth $300. Our last 3 winners here getting a Samsung Z flip phone. That's going to Charles Sims of Tennessee, Jared Sheldon of Nebraska, and Roger Dills of Ohio. That's Charles Sims of Tennessee, Jared Sheldon of Nebraska, and Roger Dills of Ohio. And one of my coworkers just sent me a photo of Oprah giving away flip phones to everybody. So, yes, you gotta love a team that keeps you humble. Okay, so I'm going to read the entire prize list out to you all, which is, as you might recall, going to be a fun little challenge for me right here at the end of the day. But I want to make sure all you winners know who you are. So get ready. We're going through it. So gift card number 1 went to Anthony Monteleone of Kansas. Apple Watch number 1 went to Mark Connican of Michigan, Philip Bloomfeld of Pennsylvania, and Bob Scalise of Illinois. Then another gift card going to Yaritza Garcia of Texas, and then a DJI Mini 3 Pro going to Paul Kroenke of California, Jeffrey Morales of California, and Taylor Blevins of Maryland. We had a gift card going to Mike Weglin of Maryland, and then some headphones going to Tiffany Pack of West Virginia, Andre Bogoshkian of California, and Jeremy McAkron of Texas. Yeah. And then we have a gift card going to Noralee Ayala of Connecticut, a gift card going to Matthew Krebsky of Connecticut, a gift card going to Mike Parsons of North Carolina, and then 3 Samsung Z flip phones, flip 4 phones. Why would they do it that way? Samsung Z flip 4 phones. Going to Charles Sims of Tennessee, Jared Sheldon of Nebraska, and Roger Dills of Ohio. That's it. Those are the winners. Those are the big winners for the day. But keep in mind, there's always big winners, so you need to keep coming back. Congratulations to all of our winners there today. Now, before you head out, if you have not spent some time checking out ransomware.org, please do head on over there. You can find everything you need to know about ransomware, how to understand, prevent, and recover. So definitely go check it out before we wrap today. You can click on that link right there on the screen. It makes it nice and easy. Open that browser for later. Now, if you're sitting out there and you're having a really good time in the audience, and I know that you all are, and you're thinking, hey, I'd like to have another conversation with Jess, Scott, or David, why not join us for an event? If you'd like to be one of our presenters here, shoot us a message at connect@actualtechmedia.com. We would love to chat with you. Well, with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I really want to thank all of our speakers here today from Rubrik, KnowBe4 Sequence, Tanium, Sneak, and Equinix for making this summit possible. Very special thank you to all of you for attending, for asking some great questions. I honestly had just a ton of fun with you all today. It really felt like we were just having a nice chit chat, talking about how to build or enhance your organization's security program layer by layer. Now, before you take off today, please do make sure that you mark your calendars. Come on back to join us on Tuesday, October 25th. Folks, this is a big one. Big, 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 big. I think we have like 15 vendors or presenters that will be here with us. So you're going to hear from 15 different presenters, 15 different experts, 15 different crazy solutions, and that's just a lot. That's a lot. So Scott, David, and I will all be here talking with these incredible experts. So why don't you come join us? That's Tuesday, October 25th, big old megacast, Battling the Ransomware Scourge, Prevention and Recovery. I love that title, Battling the Scourge. So come on back and join us. We're going to start nice and early, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, and that's, what is that, 9 a.m. Mountain Standard. I should know that. That's where I am. I hope to see you all there again soon, and until then, I hope you all have an absolutely beautiful rest of your day.